Right. I will call the city council meeting of July 9th for the city of Coburg to order at 6:12. Thank you all for being here. Councilor Lehman, can I ask you to lead the Pledge of Allegiance,
Yes.
please?
Pledge allegiance to
To
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very much.
Yeah, Counselor Fox. No. No. Counselor.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is mayor's comments. I do want to just say one thing. I had a very positive, some positive input from one of our city members about our police department. And since we have two officers here tonight, I wanted to be sure that you heard this in person. The community member in question had a party at their house, had a live band. About 10 o'clock at night, the band was wrapping up and leaving, loading stuff up. And all of a sudden, there were two police cars out front of the house. And that, because when you see police cars outside their house, it makes you a little anxious. So the police officers, they went out and said, is there something wrong? No, we just wanted to tell you that there's two cars out here with their doors open. And she was extremely impressed. She said that the officers were very, very professional, just obviously caring. And I believe that was on 4th of July. And that tells me that you had a lot of patrols out in the city trying to keep us calm and safe. So thank you very much for that.
You weren't trying to crash the party?
No, it was wrapping up. Yeah. And the folks had invited all of their neighbors, so there was no noise complaint going on either, which was where my head went first. I have to be honest and tell you that. I will also say Coburg will have a presence at the Joint Transportation Committee meeting, which is going to be July 17th, I believe. And they have asked for some input on specific questions. So I'll share those with you later in the meeting. And so we've had a chance to discuss those. I'll also work with Mr. Hanks on those at our meeting this week. So, and Councilor Engebretson is taking a look at those right now because she has been so active and engaged with the Lane Act, which is a transportation subcommittee. And this is really about funding for, I think, primarily ODOT, but it is important that all of our cities and communities be heard at that process. So not exactly sure how that will go, but we will present the information and put Coburg in the best light possible. We do not want to be forgotten, ever. We are a strong community and a proud community, and they need to know that. Biggest thing, or one of the biggest things on the agenda tonight is council vacancy interviews, and we have two candidates with us. Thank you both very much for coming. We appreciate that. We appreciate your interest in being involved in city government. And we're interested to hear what you have to say about why you want to be on city council. And we're gonna ask each of you the same questions, but we're gonna sort of rotate through. So different counselors will be asking you questions. This appointment is to fill a term that will expire December 31st of 2024. You know, that's a short term, but we are doing elections in November again, and so we'll encourage. Unfortunately, we can only choose one candidate tonight, so whichever one of you isn't chosen tonight, I believe there may well be a vacancy on city council. There always seems to come up periodically, and so would invite you to apply again at that time or run in the November election. The candidate who is appointed will need to begin the election process to be considered for the 4-year term, and completed election packets and verified signature sheets are due by, when are those due? Sammy, can you, August, end of August?
When I will have a report later.
Okay. I thought I remembered that I have to do that too because my term is up end of the year, so I will have to be gathering signatures and doing things. And you can schedule, again, whichever one of you is chosen can schedule a meeting with Ms. Engelbert. I'm gonna have Counselor Engelbretson doing everything tonight. Ms. Egbert and the city election, she is the city election officers and she will begin that process. So counselors, you have all received a copy of the questions and the applications for the 2 candidates. Each counselor will read the questions assigned to them, and if needed, you may ask for specific clarification on an answer. I will start by drawing names to determine the order in which the candidate will be called to answer questions. Each candidate will be asked the same question and we will rotate who answers. So question 1 will go to the person that I draw, but then the second question will go to candidate number 2. So we'll just back and forth. So you each have the opportunity to answer first and to answer second. That makes sense. After all the candidates have answered the questions, the city council will vote using the ballots provided, and a motion will be made by the council to appoint the candidate who receives the majority of the votes, and the oath of office will be administered.
I'm gonna go ahead and pass out the ballot that it refers to. here.
Okay,
I'm gonna ask council that they make all of their notes that they want to during the interviews on this document, as it's going to be retained in the public record. Won't need it till later, but I can use the back side of it.
I want to remind our candidates that council meets at least once a month. Usually it's twice a month anymore because there's the second Tuesday of the month is the official city council meeting. The 4th Tuesday of the month, correct me if I'm wrong, 4th Tuesday of the month has been pretty routinely reserved for a work session, which again, counselors are expected to come, or though we know that not everybody can attend in live each meeting, but there are opportunities to attend either electronically by Zoom or even through the telephone if needed, if you're unable to attend in person. So let me go ahead and, Counselor Fox,
We're interviewing 2 candidates, applicants, but
yes.
there are 3 applications. in our
We
book.
had one candidate that had to unfortunately withdraw at the last minute. So there are 2 tonight. And Ms. Egbert, would you confirm who those candidates are for me, please?
There are updated council packets on that. You have that one, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have enough.
Yep, I do.
And this will be a fairly short process, but equitable and meaningful. Okay. So the candidate that will go first is Jamison Bauman. So you get the opportunity to answer the first question. We would like to know why you want to be on council. So we'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be a city councillor.
And since we're gonna go back and forth, if you just wanna take that, Jameson, and you're there, then
Alrighty. Sammy, if you'd scoot the microphone closer, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Much obliged.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. It's good to see all of you in person. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in response to your question, I am applying for the position because I would like to bring to bear my perspective to the challenges that Coburg faces. I feel that because of my family history here and having lived out here for almost 5 years now full time, I have a good idea of not only the history of Coburg, but where Coburg is going to go in the future. And I would like to bring to bear my ideas about how to make that transition equitable and seamless and really transparent for also all the people of Coburg can have equal and fair input in terms of where they want the city to go.
Thank you very much. Mr. McKean?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong page, so see, you have to bear with me tonight. Mr. Lembrick.
right, I'm Luke Lembrick. I apologize for the disturbance. I had this up here, I should silence things. Silence things. Push the alarm. I moved here, I think in 2020, and just down on Mill Street, in the old Broughton house. Immediately met my neighbors, felt very welcome. As we're moving in, everybody that walked by. Get some other improvements done. Just some things that happened all the way in. I just kind of really enjoyed my first. When we first moved in, my wife weren't sure if this was our permanent home. And as we've lived here, we realized that it is. And so I just thought, oh, if I'm gonna take this.
We'll start with the questions, and Jason, you will get the first opportunity to respond, and I believe that Councillor Smith is going to ask that first question. Hey, Jameson,
Hey Claire, nice to see you.
nice to see you
It
too.
really is, regardless of what happens tonight. It's worth it just to see you.
Well, thank you.
What are your priorities and areas of interest for the city? I know you mentioned you'd like to see it move forward. What are your?
My priorities really is we have to, I think, engage our young people and our families. We have to give them something to do. We have to give the people a reason to be involved and to volunteer and to do things and to interact with government in a way which Coburg has historically struggled to have people do, as evidenced by the repeated vacancies on the council. We have to give people a reason to be involved. Additionally, I would very much like to take Coburg in the direction of having more infrastructure that is accessible to all people, not just people like myself, but people with strollers, walkers, etc. This is a community of retirees and young mothers, and there are places that they simply cannot access appropriately enough, in my judgment. And I believe I'm qualified to make a judgment in that regard for obvious reasons. So I'd really like to put that front and center on the agenda, in addition to youth engagement.
Thank you.
I think my priorities are, that's what made me want. I really enjoy that I walk everywhere and I feel safe. Riding my bike around town. And so I enjoy that, like, that it's walkable, but also the people in town respect. It's, I know. It's not walking, but everybody respects. I want to add that small charm. Also the activities that we do offer are our Coburg days come back. So with that, I think we have a lot of growth going on right now. We have a new neighborhood at the end of the imagine that. So balancing in that charm where everybody knows each other, with inviting more people. Priority there. As also balancing that.
Well, and Mr. Limbrick, you get to answer this question first.
What do you think are the three biggest challenges facing Coburg? Then how would you address them?
I think that, like I just said, the balancing the growth, one of the big challenges. Because we are growing, a lot of houses going in. I've had a couple. And so, making sure everybody feels welcome, in inviting, but not being like, how do you get away? Balancing, so I think we're growing fast. Seems like we're growing fast right now. Balancing that growth. I imagine there's few other challenges right now. So that always water system.
Well, thank you for the question. The three biggest challenges, as I see them, are how do we, as a community, make clear, deliberate decisions about what we're going to do with our revenue, with our infrastructure, and with our businesses? How do we leverage all three of those things to the benefit of Coburg? It's not just enough to say, well, the water system's an issue. How how can we be creative enough to leverage that to the advantage of Coburg? How do we look into things that could possibly free up additional revenue, such as grants, etc., whether they be federal or state, which provides additional revenue without an imposition on the taxpayer? Because that's something that nobody wants to do, really. So I think our revenues are clearly our biggest challenge. Our growth is our second biggest challenge. And our what I'm going to call infrastructure management, for lack of a better term. In terms of addressing them, well, I've hit on them already. You have to leverage every little nook and cranny. You really do. So grants, what can the state offer? But also, what can the private sector do? Where is it beneficial to us to work with the private sector? Where can we get additional subsidies? Where can we get grants? So we have to be really creative. We have to put, I think, elbow grease into it. But most of all, we have to use our head.
Layman. Your convenience, and Jason, this will go to
I
you
love it.
first.
Thank you.
As city councilor, how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process?
Well, this goes to exactly what I've been doing. Regardless of what happens here tonight, I can confirm that I'll be on the ballot in November, should a vacancy so arise. And over the past, I don't know, 80 days or so, I've been pounding the pavement. I've been doing about 20 hours a week since I decided to start doing this. So I've had multiple curbside conversations with people, and you may or may not see me around town. Some of you might, some of you might not, but I'm always out. I know a lot of people. People know who I am. They're not afraid to talk to me. I'm almost out of business cards, as a matter of fact. I'm gonna have to get more. So I intend to go directly to the people, because I understand that people might not have time or the desire to come down here or watch on the live stream. There's no harm going directly to the people, finding out what they desire directly from them. That way there's no misunderstanding. I'm auditioning to be the people's representative. My job is to listen twice and to speak once.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
You can.
Yes,
So 20 hours a week, can you describe what you've been doing?
well,
What was also the feedback that you've gotten from speaking with folks?
I've gotten a lot of feedback, and most of that feedback has been, yes, let's find something for our young people to do. Let's make sure that Coburg grows in an effective and sustainable way. Let's do more things for our community. Let's build a community center, a proper one. You know, the Coburg Commons is great, but let's build a proper fit for purpose community center. Those are all things that I've been hearing. And it's not just regular people. I've attended some of the meetings via the live stream. I've gotten input from one of the members of the Parks Committee, who I know well. I have been given a general lay of the land by Sammy in terms of issues that you're confronting. And I've been putting together my policy platform, so it's a lot of work.
Thank you.
Yes,
Ditto. The question.
I think that from what I see, there's definitely an attempt to have residents. The monthly flyer that. Also with them. Came with, I know. Height, but the. But I think in general for myself. Would just make it known that and just make people know that. Won't have any questions or concerns. And I will.
Do you have a table and a sign?
I would be more introducing myself. At all.
Counselor Engelbrechtson.
Okay,
Mr. Limbrick, we'll start with you responding to this question.
so counselors will not only spend a significant amount of time talking to citizens, business owners, other cities, city administrators and staff, gathering information to make informed decisions. They are also expected to participate in 1 to 2 city council meetings per month, plus 2 to 3 meetings, additional meetings like budget, URA, planning commission, or meetings with agency partners as assigned. And then just keeping in mind, preparing for meetings, and reviewing packet material can take 2 to 4 hours per meeting. And so we just want to make sure that you're kind of aware of what you might be signing up for. And then the question is, do you feel you can make this commitment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would there be any barriers that you're aware of at this point to meeting those commitments?
Not this time, especially the monthly council meetings. Tuesday evenings are great. And then other than that, yeah, besides work, I can schedule around most anything else I have.
Well, that's a very fair question, and the answer to that is no, because public policy is what I've decided to do with my life. So for me, regardless of what happens, it's my intention that this is the starting point of something. Now, I am not gonna look a opportunity in the face and then not deliver on it. I've been getting the packets, and on average, I've been having them read, understood within that evening or sometimes the day after. So I'm a quick reader. I am able to synthesize sometimes very complex topics quite quickly. There's a reason the teachers used to call me the sponge, because I am a sponge. So no, I intend to metaphorically, not literally, jump into this with both feet, because this is what I've decided to unashamedly dedicate myself to. Yeah.
Counselor Fox.
The end of the question was, can you make this commitment?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
very good.
Now, would you like to ask
Oh,
your
yeah,
question? And
um,
Jason, you can go first on this.
What would you like Coburg to be, and what is your vision for Coburg in the next 10 years?
I want Coburg to be a place where people can be their best selves and where it provides a true climate of success. I want people to embrace their hopes, their dreams, and to be able to live in Coburg, grow up here, and when they're done growing up, when they're out of the nest, I want people to say, man, I want people to come back and I want to go back there as an adult because Coburg is my home. I don't just view Coburg as the place that I live. Coburg is sort of ingrained in my conscience. My family has been here a long time. I've known Councillor Smith since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've known people, I've seen generations come and go, and I want all future generations to say, man, I want to go back and add another layer to Coburg and to be part of this amazing community, which is our little piece of paradise.
When talking to just friends and coworkers and whatnot in the greater Eugene area, everything I hear is envy that I live in Coburg. And it strikes me as it's known as the most desirable place to live in Lane County or in this area. Everybody I talk to says, oh, I hope I can buy a house here someday. I hope that to get out there, especially people with young kids, they want to send their kids to the charter school. And if out of the charter school, they want to be in the Gillum School District. And so I want that reputation to continue. People like how the town is. They like the small town of it, but they like the accessibility to Eugene for things that they need. They like the downtown, the antique stores, the restaurants. And so I would want to continue to expand on that, make us open for business, but be selective of how we do that and where residents can build houses, where businesses can grow. So I want to keep that desirability. So in 10 years, I hope that we're still the most desired town in Lane County.
Thank you both. I think that is the end of our questions. Did anybody have any follow-up questions or anything that you would like a little bit more information on? And I mean that to counselors, of course. If not, yes, we're ready for you to cast your ballots.
We had them too.
Yes. Thank you. It was great to hear from both of you and your enthusiasm and your ideas. Your passion for this community is something that we want to replicate in many. You're coming at me from all directions. What can I say? Yes, if you would like to sit down.
Yeah. You're very welcome. I had a chance to meet and talk with Peggy the other day.
Yeah, she said that.
And I had a chance to see your lovely dog, Henry, as well.
Thank you.
Who was very well behaved.
Yeah, good.
He is very cute, isn't he?
Oh, that's the reason I stopped.
Not to talk to Peggy, but to talk to the dog.
Well, it's always a joy to talk to Peggy.
I often know more of the dogs' names than I do the people. I apologize, but. All right. I'll move. And here's the last one. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Just announce it.
Okay. It's like the votes are in and Jameson was selected by council to fill this seat. And as the mayor said, through the end of this calendar year.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you in November.
Yes, it's, we need people with passion and vision and commitment to serve on this committee, on this council, as well as other committees and commissions within the city. So don't give up with this, please. And again, November is coming quickly. We'll Jameson's name on the ballot and perhaps others too. Hey, Sammy, you will now do the,
So, yes,
Oh.
Jameson, I guess we can go right there. Great, right. Oh, and let you get on the camera there, so
Oh,
you have a few people watching, I've seen.
am I not on the,
You got it, yeah.
okay,
I, Jameson Bauman,
I, Jameson Bellman,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States and the state of Oregon,
of the United States and the state of Oregon,
and of the charter and ordinances
and of the charter and ordinances
and rules
and
Of-
rules
of procedures for the city of Coburg,
of procedure for the city of Coburg,
and that I will faithfully and honorably
and that I will faithfully and honorably
perform these duties of Coburg Counselor
perform these duties of Coburg Counselor
for the city of Coburg.
for the city of Coburg.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
welcome aboard.
Hey, my pleasure.
Good.
And I get to work with people that I know,
Yeah,
so that's great.
you'll know us even better in a short period of time. So,
I don't know if I can pull it all the way because my knees might hit, there might be a height issue.
That's just
So
fine.
we'll,
You're right there is good. If you're comfortable.
here,
we'll
I'll
get it.
just move my joystick. Don't wanna damage it too much because it's $56,000.
yeah, we don't want that.
Perfect. If I can just say very quickly that I'm very grateful for the confidence the people have expressed in me through you. And I would do my utmost to not only justify, but maintain that confidence and hopefully grow it as we move forward. And I want to thank all the people that applied for their answers or for their contribution. This is honestly an emotional moment for me. And Claire, I have to say the one regret I have is that Ray's not here.
Thank you.
The one regret I had, and I said that to Sammy some months ago when I was talking to her, the one regret I have on this day of joy for me is that Ray is not here to see this.
He'd be very proud of you.
He's right behind you too.
He's right behind you. Yes.
Well, that is true. And I look forward to working with you all, and thank you very much to my parents, my grandparents, and friend Jan, who are here to see this. And with that, it's time to get to work.
Thank you very much. We're happy that you have joined us. The next agenda item is agenda review. Does any counselor have? It may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting such action prior to consideration. We have the minutes from June 11th and the minutes from June 25th, which was a special meeting. Any counselor have any item to remove
Thank you very
or
much.
add to? If not, I will consider a motion. And a second.
If you don't mind, I think I'll start practicing. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Counselor Bowman.
Second.
Second by Counselor Wells. So there's a motion by Counselor Bowman and a second by Counselor Wells to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The consent agenda passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Is there anyone signed up for public comment? You. Are there any issues that need to be raised by council? Take it not, since you didn't bring it up before. We do have a special guest tonight, and Mr. Hanks, would you like to move that forward, or?
Sure, I'll be super brief. I will bring Chief Larson up to do the better introduction of our new officer.
Our favorite police chief.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. This is your new Cobra Police Officer, Jason Smith. He graduated the academy on June 21st. So he's newly out of the recruit school and is in his field training program. Jason was born and raised in Eugene. He became a reserve with the Cobra Police Department in 2020. He had previously worked for the Oregon Youth Authority. And then he was also in the Navy from 1998 to 2002. On his off time, he likes to spend time with family, hiking and fishing and those kind of things. Just to give a little bit of age perspective, his class number was 438. Mine was 184. So he is a new rookie police officer, but we welcome Jason Smith.
Happy that you have chosen and that we have chosen you to join a very fine force.
I agree. Thank you. All right, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to serving the community.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hanks, I will turn this over to you on council action items.
Great, thank you.
Just a quick question. Sorry, what page are we on? I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
Like, thank
25,
you. Thank you.
20 and 21. Yes.
I got the packet in my email before.
It is a
the meeting,
large
and obviously I
packet.
didn't have time to go
Oh,
through
there it
it.
is. Okay.
Okay, Thanks.
Yeah, this is a crash course for brand new counselors. So
I'm perfectly
understand.
fine.
I had to put some tabs on mine, Counselor Bowman, so I could figure out where I was.
Yeah, council, the item in front of you is probably not one that comes up too often. I haven't had this come up in my prior work, but all SDC ordinances in cities around the state have a variety of required sections. And one of those sections is about an appeal process for the imposition of SDCs. So before we get too far into the kind of the merits and the issues of the appeal, I just wanted to kind of go through. I just wrote down really quickly a bunch of questions that I think I can kind of pose and answer to kind of frame it, and then we can step into the merits of the appeal. Why is this on the agenda? It's on the agenda because the calculated systems development charge for a requested water connection was an amount that was that the applicant feels is not appropriate charge for their particular situation. And administratively, the city administrator is not able to alter the fee calculation and ordinance requirements that go into creating the fee and charging the fee. So typically SDCs, and I'll go a little bit more into what they are just for everyone, are done administratively. They happen with building permits typically. So you get your regular building permit, plan check, plumbing, mechanical, all of that. And you also then have local systems development charges. And Coburg has 4, parks, transportation, water, and sewer. And so those typically happen all bundled together in a building permit. And council only sees them at budget time, and at time we do projects in aggregate. You're not involved in the administrative process of systems development charges. Because there is a request to alter the calculation of the charge, that's what brings this process forward to the council, because the city administrator does not have the authority to adjust that. So that's the basis and really why we're here tonight on this particular agenda item. So the appeal process is not spelled out super well in the ordinance. It doesn't go into a whole lot of detail of all of the steps involved. It clearly says that that there's limits to the city administrator's ability to alter it, and it says ultimately it goes to council. There's a hearings process that I think we attempted to productively went through in kind of an informal way with the applicant. We had a great meeting, kind of talked about kind of the history and the merits, and really the only way to resolve it fully is to complete the end of the appeal process, which is tonight's agenda item. So I'll step really quick. What are SDCs? They're systems development charges. They are intended, they're Oregon revised statutes guides them all. They're very strictly enforced. They're very limited in scope to what they can do. They are in essence, the objective of a systems development charge is to, at the time a new customer, developer, resident, whatever it may be, business, engages or connects themselves to the system that the charges connect to: transportation, which is our street system, our park system, our water system, and our sewer system. At the time they connect, there's the systems development charges it's an impact fee. And actually in California, that's their official name. They're impact fees. They are meant to charge them their share of proportionate future growth-related impacts to those 4 infrastructure areas that I mentioned. And they're calculated. So how are they calculated? They're calculated using the master plans for each of those 4 areas. So the city of Coburg and all cities in the state have a master plan for parks and open space, master plan for a transportation system plan, which is the transportation master plan, a water master plan, and a wastewater master plan. All of those have 20-year capital expenditure lists of needed expenditures for replacement and growth in them. And systems development charges then are calculated based on the cost of all of those 20-year improvements with different kind of key metrics that try to equitably charge every different customer base, residential, multifamily, business, for their impact and their proportionate share of the cost of those future projects. How can SDCs be spent? SDCs are very limited in how they're spent. They each of those 4 categories, we have funds that they all go into. So in our budget process, the Parks SDC goes into the general fund. It can only be spent on new, not just can't be for replacement parks improvements. It's for new enhanced park improvements, capital, can't be for operations and maintenance. And that holds true for all 4. So in the general fund is where the Parks SDC is placed. The street fund is for the transportation SDC, water fund for the water SDC, sewer fund for the sewer SDC. Those funds are collected annually and set aside in a separate, they're accounted for separately. And as we talked about in the budget process, we have fairly healthy balances in 3 of the 4 SDCs. Parks has an okay balance, but we have a fairly large balance because SDCs are actually sometimes hard to expend. They certain projects that we have in front of us don't have any growth component. They're just a replacement, like a water line replacement. No SDCs can be used for that. Whereas a new well that we're in the process of doing, that one has a growth percentage attached to that project. So a certain portion of that project can be paid for with SDCs. So just to sum it up, it's very highly restricted. They're reserved for capital projects and only a portion of those capital projects that are growth related. I think I mentioned it typically already. When are SDCs charged and collected? They're charged at the time people connect to the system or create the demand, create the use on the system. So typically they're with in a kind of 95, 98% of the time, they're with a building permit. And again, that just happens administratively. We code them and they go into their respective funds to be reserved for future projects. This appeal and this project is a little bit different, quite a bit different. So I'll move into a little bit of well, before I hit the merits of this, maybe go into a little procedure. So the plan here for tonight is I'll give a little staff report. I'll finish out kind of the merits or the overview as I see it. The applicants are here, clearly are best positioned to provide their explanation of the situation and their rationale for their request. So after I finish the staff report, turn it over to the applicant and the mayor can determine kind of the time frame. There isn't anything called out specifically in council rules or the ordinance about time limits, so that is up to you all. But I think following kind of a planning commission format kind of works well. Give the applicant their appropriate time to explain their side of it. Council can then ask them questions relative to their appeal and their rationale. Then can ask staff questions that may come from that, or maybe just what's in your head aside from what's been raised by the applicant here. And then there's time then for any sort of back and forth Q&A, and then ultimately asking for a motion, deliberation, vote. And typically after a motion is on the table, then that's kind of the time when it's just council. It's staff is kind of out of the picture, applicant is out of the picture, you all are deliberating. So just a reminder to get those questions out before you enter kind of that motion and deliberation part of that. So that's the process I think we have in front of us tonight. And I can get in real quick, go through the packet, hopefully in a summarized way, gives you an indication of what you really have is kind of your range of options. But Premier RV, many of you in the room probably know the history better than I. I've had a crash course, had good input from city staff and also from the owners and their background and documents that they provided as well, which is contained in the packet. So the majority of this agenda item packet is provided as documentation from Premier RV. Just to summarize all of that, and I think that was the conclusion in our meetings as well, but I don't want to speak for them. There was the annexation happened, and there was a commitment for the city, as in all annexations. When you're annexed, one of the pros of annexing is you have access and rights to city municipal services. And one of those was water. And throughout the documents that are in the packet, there was and is a commitment to serve water to the property. I think some of the conversation the applicant can speak further on is, the duration. Obviously, the time that has gone since annexation to now is a long time, and there's probably a myriad of kind of micro reasons for that. It's relevant to a degree for you all. I'm not sure all of the details are absolutely relevant, but the macro issue of time from annexation to now in being able to serve them water definitely is a component of the appeal. The request originally was to not charge them, to waive the SDC, the water SDC. That one, I felt legally was not able to be done, was not, that it was legally able for them to appeal and request that. My strong recommendation to council is that there really is no legal basis to not charge at all. I think what I've tried to outline in the staff report are three options that I think do have a legal basis for whichever option council feels the situation and is merits and is most equitable for both the water customers of Coburg, who you're sort of representing. That's you're kind of the water board.
Excuse me, but these options are laid out on page 21 and 22.
Yep. 21 and on page 21 and 22. And getting to those, in looking at all the documentation, two things I think kind of stood out, or the conclusion, I guess, is there's no mention made really about SDCs in most of the information. There's a lot of information about connecting them to the city, to the water system. There is some recent-ish, last 5 years, documentation about the connection fees. And the construction and connection fees are really, that's the public works operations side of things. Systems development charges are kind of that administrative layer. So they come together at the end, but they are different things. So there was no mention made about that, either that they would be charged or they wouldn't. It just is kind of mostly silent. However, historically, the city has charged and collected SDCs in the other three categories from Premier RV over time. And so the water is kind of the remaining SDC and the remaining issue because they haven't been connected. And that's in process now as I've provided updates prior on the project that we actually just last week did our final bore and got it to the property. There's a few little things left, but it is basically finally ready to connect after a lot of different issues came up, many of which I would imagine this current and prior staff and councils may not have anticipated. So I'll quickly go through the options, and it really is sort of a small, medium, large. And starting with large is where we started is charging the SDC based on today's rates, the current rates that we charge a residential building permit for a new single family home that we would charge anybody connecting is using our current ordinance and our current rate structure. And that's that's option number one. And that's where that's where the appeal began, was starting to charge on that. Option 2 is to charge and collect the SDC using the fee schedule in place at the time that the city really actively engaged in the capital projects that got water to or near their property, which is DeBoer under I-5, and engineering happened in the 2018-19 range. That is really kind of the way I was looking at the background of this. That's functionally when the city, 2 feet jumped in, and it's making that possible to connect. Without that project, there was really no opportunity to connect. So that's an option 2. That's an area that's I've tried to set up all 3 options with a little bit of a rationale or a findings that give a little justification for each of these, and you can utilize those how you want. That option 2 goes, reduces the SDC down to approximately 92,000. The exact number would be either 2018 or 19, and we could fine tune that. Option 3 is option 2 is the medium. So option 3 is the small, in the small, medium, large, and there's a rationale for that as well. Charging the SDC at the date of annexation. Obviously, that's the lowest SDC charge that the applicant out of the 3 options, $44,496. And the rationale there is that was the time that the original commitment was made, and the applicant had no real control and ability to exercise that commitment until the city did a number of things with their water system to get there. And, again, from the applicants, I don't want to take their arguments away from them, but there, is likely is that it wasn't possible, that's the time that makes the most sense. That's the time when they were annexed in. That's the time when they were ready and expected to be connected.
Legal question, if you don't
Yes.
mind.
You bet.
What is the legal merit of the appeal? Is it A, they believe the charge is unfair, or B, they believe that the charge is invalid as provided by city ordinance? I'm confused as to what the merit of the appeal is. I couldn't get that from their letter. So is it A or B?
I think, Councilor Bowman, that was probably a good question for the applicant, if you don't mind asking the applicant that question.
Alrighty.
My take is administratively, they don't have to describe that in the appeal language. They can just say they want to appeal. But I think that's a great question for the applicant is the merits or their basis for that.
Okay.
All they have to do is state that they don't agree with the calculation made by the city administrator to trigger the appeal.
Alrighty,
Great question, though.
just wanted to clarify that. I
Yep.
couldn't, because I didn't get that from the documents.
Yep, and I'm sure they'll be able to answer that one for you. So the final piece out of those 3 options, just want to lay out kind of the two-headed monster here. We're dealing with SDCs and the connection construction fees. The city has, since I got here, it was actually a very hot topic day one, I believe, because I think there was some permitting issues happening the very first day I got here at the end of July last year. The city has had incurred expenses of between $60,000 and $75,000, not including the bore. After that, just in engineering and subsequent wetland permitting requirements to facilitate the ability to connect both to Premier RV, but also to the 107 acres. So that 60 to 75,000 is not exclusive to Premier RV in any sense, but it is very much related to the ability to connect. So there has been considerable expense. Some of that is typical expense that the city, the municipal system would incur. Portions of that often, and by I think our procedures would, when you're within 300 feet, the applicant pays those fees. But that had been documented fairly clearly and committed prior, and really isn't spelled out anywhere in our ordinances about whether that's a council call or a administrative decision. But my take is that commitment had been made in a prior council communications, I think, that is in the packet. So I think that is not in question, the construction side of the connection. So what we're really talking about here only is the systems development charges. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any of the kind of the lead-in questions to get set, and then we can turn it over to the applicant.
So question, I think I heard you say that Premier RV paid 3 other separate SDC assessments for the parks and the wastewater and the streets.
Correct.
And was that using the standard calculation?
My understanding is I did not dig extensively into all the methodology and the rates, but my understanding at the time, I believe, and that's another one you could ask the follow-up question of the applicant. But yes, there's nothing in any records that indicate any alternative fees, appeals or anything to council. So I would make that assumption that
The standard calculation is, the assessment is based on the actual connection.
the time those are done. And the part that makes this one a little bit different, it makes it hard to gauge that exact thing, is annexing in a property that is already developed is different because there's no automatic triggers of bare land turning into development. That makes it crystal clear, black and white. There is really no question when we have a bare piece of land, a development application comes in, we know exactly when that's charged, what it's based on, and that's why you don't get appeals typically. I think that's why this is in front of you, is this is a unique situation to annex a property that is at the time, quite developed, not all the way. They did do an expansion, 7 or 8 years ago. But yeah, that's what makes it challenging on all of the systems, is when is the appropriate time to charge these particular impact fees.
Councilor Wells?
Adam, in all of this, was there anywhere that there was a contractual obligation of the city to deliver that water to the east side of I-5 within a certain period of time?
Not within a certain period of time. There were commitments in the narratives of all of that, and in the findings of the annexation, that there were some timing things that after the water master plan was completed, then the reservoir, on the east side, it was going to facilitate the ability. They had to build out the system to be able to do it. So it was clearly in the master plan to serve the east side. In the 2004 master plan, there were steps and funding and projects that had to happen to make that happen. That reservoir, as you probably all know that have been here, that one ended up not happening, obviously, which I think was contributed to some of the delays. But yeah, when somebody annexes in, or when the city annexes a property in, either direction, there is really an implied commitment to serve them with public facilities. That's one of the components of being in the city.
It says that 3 or 4 different places that in the information you give, but no specific time period. You didn't say on September 2005, we will have water on the east side of I-5 available to you.
Correct. There's no date specific in there, like a development agreement might have or something like that. There's none.
Second question, where is the boring? I should know this, right? But where is the boring? Where does it come across I-5?
Excuse me, just south of the southerly border of Premier RV's site.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Councilor Fox.
So obviously this would be a precedent-setting thing if we did anything other than the way standard practice has been.
Yes. I would say the question for council to wrestle with is how big of a precedent it is, given the circumstances of the appeal. But yes, any deviation from the ordinance would be a precedent setting. The question is how much and how unique is this?
a follow-up question to that, then if we decide to depart from convention and ordinance, how tightly are we bound by the precedent that we set in the future, or do we still have some wiggle room? So when the next appeal comes along, we can judge that on the individual merits, or do we say, well, we judged the year appeal this way, so therefore we're bound to judge this appeal a certain way?
At some point that gets into a question for legal staff, but my first take on that would be it again depends upon the similarities of the next one to this one. Councils have discretion to say, I believe that the next one, the hypothetical next one, is different in this way, fill in the blank. You know, it's different, so therefore my decision is going to
Right,
be
and
different.
that was my question, so thank you very much, that's very helpful.
Counselor Lyman.
So just a clarification, if the ordinance is written such that option one was implemented because that's the standard calculation, that's the way the ordinance is written, and that's been the practice all the time, except for when appeal comes, does the fact that there's an appeal within our ordinance allow us to change the calculation, or do we need to amend the ordinance in order to have option 2 or option 3 selected?
We're not changing the methodology. It's still, you know, or if
Based on the date then.
right, it's the time. So we're selecting what was the methodology and the calculation of a 3-inch meter connection at different times, different points in time. If you were to want to get into toying with the methodology and the calculation, that would be, I would recommend, be very problematic, legally and functionally. But what we're talking about here is kind of that slider of what is an approved alternate, an acceptable approved alternate to a right now point in time of the calculation.
Counselor Fox.
Did you run this by legal?
I did most of the process for sure. You know, one of the impetus to that is, you know, the beginnings of this were some questions about, you know, a lawsuit. So once that gets put forward to staff, we immediately engaged legal staff. But I would say, Councilor Fox, it was primarily limited to the procedural aspects of it.
Okay, so legal didn't venture any, I'm just wondering if has this ever happened before? Not in Coburg, but obviously, but like around the state, someone annexed something and 5 years later, they're able to develop and they go, oh, 5 years, well, we'll charge you 5 years in the past.
I would hazard to guess there's one exactly like this. I wouldn't think there is. I wouldn't think there's one exactly like this. I have been involved in appeals of a calculation to councils before. So that part is not unique. This unique aspect, you know, I guess that's also what you have to kind of gauge is how unique is this. Annexation of property that is already considerably developed is not the most common annexation type to start with. I don't know how many may have come forward that are looking at what is the appropriate date. I've been involved in ones that involve a date of, is it valid? And some cities have changed their ordinances to reflect this. Is it valid to charge when a building permit is issued or when they actually utilize and connect to the system? Because there has been a developer complaint saying, hey, I'm building a really large, you know, commercial building or a commercial development. You're charging me a transportation SDC now, but these businesses aren't going to be in this building operating for 3 or 5 years. So charge me when the impact happens. So there's that. That's different than this. I've also been involved when the question is on the transportation side, what is the right rate? The basis of the calculation is what type of a use am I as an applicant? The one I was involved with was a retirement facility. What kind of a retirement facility are they? The International Transportation Engineers Handbook, that's this thick, which our peak trips are generated, that calculates the transportation SDC. They want a different, they say, we're not really that. And so the documentation that they provided in their appeal wasn't a date issue about when to charge. It was about, do they have trip count data that substantiates that they are different than what the standard in the book says and what the city applied as the standard. And those have been, I think, both directions. They've been successfully altered. And I think some councils have said, no, we think that you're not that different. You are a whatever, fill in the blank, like you are a fast food restaurant, not a sit down casual. I mean, on transportation, it gets that nuanced. This one from the calculation side is pretty straightforward. Are you a 3/4 inch meter, a 1 inch meter, 2 inch meter, 3 inch meter? That part's not in question. It's just about when was the appropriate time to charge this.
One more thing.
Oh,
Councilor Fox.
absolutely.
Not annexed to Eugene is Santa Clara, and city of Eugene put in a sewer system in Santa Clara in the early 90s, and residents were probably happy to have a sewer system, but they were not happy with the charges, but they got hit with the charges at the time of connection. So this backdating thing is unique.
Maybe just a real quick, and I'm not trying to defend, and this is really free. I think the rationale for the earlier one is they would have wanted to be charged that SDC then and be connected then. So I think that's part of, and you can ask a follow-up question to the applicant on that.
Councilor Bowman?
Did they know in advance, did Premier RV know in advance what the charge would be? In other words, did they know that once they had been connected that they would be charged? Or was this sort of a surprise? You're now charged because you're connected to us.
Part of that you'll have to ask the applicant. A part of that in the conversation is that I think there's different assumptions made or understandings of the words used. The city committed to connect and not pay the connection fees. That probably meant something different to the applicant than it might have meant to staff. That's, again, I'm assuming things, I'm reading, I'm speculating. So I think it's best to ask the applicant the majority of that. But I did bring up, that's why I brought up earlier, the difference between the connection construction costs and connection fees and systems development charges, and the fact that the documents that both the applicant submitted and that we perused and dug through didn't speak to SDCs. I don't know if that doesn't necessarily for or against anything. That just it might help answer that question, but the applicant can add on to that.
Councilor Lyman?
So STCs are intended to reflect the costs to the city for the services, not to make a profit, not to lose money, but to calculate what the actual or relatively actual costs to be.
The estimated future cost of the capital for capital improvements related to growth of the 4 different categories of SDCs. And the key part is really, if it was the full cost, not just the growth cost, it'd be astronomical SDC fees. So it really is. So when you do a matrix and we look at the water master plan, and we'll bust it out when we have our work session on the water system here in a few weeks, one of the tables will list the 20-year projects, and it will list the engineer's estimate of that cost. And it'll also then list whether it's a growth, what component of the project is growth related. And many of them will be zero growth related. And so so those all get subtracted. So if the total is $40 million of future capital, then you subtract all the non-growth related projects out of it. And you add up all the increments of growth. If one of them is 10%, one of them is 5%, and then that number then gets plugged into the meters in the residential, multifamily, the different classes of customers we have. And then that is the methodology that pretty objectively provides the answer to what is that particular entity's cost that they have to pay into the system that covers their future growth related only component. Because they're paying the regular infrastructure that's not growth related. That's part of your regular monthly. That's what we calculate in monthly bills, the base rate and the consumption. So everybody pays for the replacement cost of capital projects, but new people pay the growth increment. It's so the rest of the existing residents and existing customers don't have to pay for the growth related impacts of someone else. They pay for the replacement of the system of their own, and all growth kind of buys in to the system.
Counselor Fox.
That's a curiosity question. Do nonprofits pay system development charges?
Yes.
Because where Serenity Lane is, we annex land below it. And then they didn't connect for years because it took them out. Curious when that.
Yeah, and really, again, SDCs are organ revised statutes. They're very straightforward. They're very objective. They are specific to the impact the use has on growth components of infrastructure. So the impacts are there, whether or not you're how you're organized as an entity.
Mr. Smith. So follow up to Counselor Fox's question, with Serenity Lane, we annexed property, but was that before it was developed?
Yeah.
So they paid the SDCs then when they pulled their permits, as opposed to a place like Premier that's already standing that didn't apply for permits, as opposed to when they hooked up, correct?
That would, I haven't dug into that, but that would be the way that system typically works.
My understanding.
Wasn't sure.
That
Okay.
would be typical. It would be, and if they didn't, they would need to come to council and have a conversation about about how to do it differently. Yeah. And that's what makes, annexing in a use that's already in place a little more ripe to this and a little more unique in terms of the precedent question that Councillor Fox asked. Is that a big precedent or is that a really narrow precedent that Mayor and Councillor Bowman asked similarly? Is that something that it officially binds you? No. Unofficially, does that set kind of a policy expectation? Yes, if the situation is identical or close enough to identical for a future council. You can't bind a future council either. The decisions of a future council, are independent of yours. They have to have a legal basis, just like we're trying to make sure that we have a legal basis for whatever you choose here.
I think just technically, I don't think the land that Serenity Lane was on was annexed close to the time when they developed, but
Right.
I didn't want to, I just, for the record, I guess.
Years later.
Yeah.
Right.
Many
Right.
years later.
Which would, again, go with the whole growth thing is that you typically, they wouldn't be charged necessarily because they aren't, they aren't creating, they aren't creating the impacts. Yeah.
Else. Not, we'll invite Mr. Williams or surrogate up. I'm not sure which of you wants to speak, and thank you for coming.
There's one of the counselors here that has heard this story over and over. So John, if you don't want to listen, you don't have to. I have in front of me the Lane County Planning Commission staff report dated March 2nd, 2004. The applicant was the city of Coburg. The city administrator was Mike Houston. And I want to tell you why we are in your city. Mike Houston came over to me when we first bought that property and said that they would like to annex us to the city. And I asked, well, what's in it for me? He said, well, will you bring your water? And I said, that's good enough for me. If you'll bring us water, we're in. And that was the fastest annexation that's ever happened in the state of Oregon. But it was a lie. Mike stood at our, where our building now is, and pointed up the hill and he said, next summer, there'll be 1 million gallon tank up there and you will be hooked up and there will be, it'll be gravity feed and you'll have all the water you want. And I bought it, much to my chagrin. To be candid with you, if I could de-annex right now, I would, because this has been a ridiculous relationship with the city, not caused by any of you, but caused by one city manager who was corrupt. And I'm paying for his corruption. That's the way I look at it. We have the total of fees that we have paid to the city since we were annexed, including the SDCs that we've paid and the taxes we've paid over the last 20 years is over $1 million. Was it only 10? Only the last 10 years, we've paid $1 million in fees and taxes. We are a small business. And, you know, the only appeal I'm making is that if there's a way to get out of the city, I would love to do it. Because we're getting very little out of it from our side. We do have sewer now, but it cost me $400,000 to do away with our sewage disposal lagoons over there. And we were forced to do that because we are now part of the city. And when the city decided they wanted to get sewers, we had to pay. But it wasn't just getting the sewer. We had to destroy a perfectly good operating disposal system over there. And the 400,000 I'm talking about is just what it costs to get the DEQ requirements met. And we took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of truckloads of material off that site in order to meet their requirements. So that's that's another part of my feeling that we've been taken advantage of by the city. The city has gotten what they want, I guess. You want a sewer, you want water, and I don't blame you for that. But out of that bargain, all we've done is spent an awful lot of money that didn't improve our systems at all. And I have here in front of me the 20 years of paperwork that's gone on between me and the city. And I've never gotten any consideration for us at all. It's just, well, that's the way the ball bounces, but the city was, in my opinion, was just derelict in the way they handled getting the sewer system paid for. I was told that the city had a water plan with a grant for $3.5 million, and that it was going to be done the next year. If that had happened, we would have paid the systems development charge then, and it would have been about $40,000. But the ball just keeps getting punted down, punted down, punted down, and punted down. And it's not costing the city anything, but it's costing us a small fortune to do that. So I'm just appealing to you on the basis of fair play. It wasn't fair play when we were brought into this city. It was based on a lie. And I think I can prove that lie. And I think there's some of you probably have lived here long enough that you know how this city was being financed back then. It was being financed by writing tickets on Interstate 5 And your city manager and city police chief at the time was Mike Houston. And he's the one that talked me into doing this as a representative of the city. And so, I mean, you can just say, okay, well, that's your problem. But I think it really reflects badly on the city to take 20 years to deliver something they said they were gonna do 1 year and then charges the rate for 20 years later. You have anything else you want to add?
Is it okay if I do? Yes, yes, we do need to be conscious of time.
Oh, yeah,
so
I'm gonna be
I-
really quick
okay,
because he was doing the main talking, but as conversations were happening earlier,
Quickly, Lisa, if you wouldn't mind saying your name for the record
oh,
too.
sorry,
Yeah.
Lisa McIntosh.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm CFO of the company, Paul's daughter. So we just had our engineer out because we were looking at, figuring out some more of the construction stuff so we can get hooked up, which we do appreciate getting the water. I know what my father said and I agree with him. We are extremely frustrated, but we do appreciate getting the water. The engineer that I was just speaking to when we were out and about walking the property and looking at some different items, I said, oh, God, I had this heart attack over the SDC fees because we were under the understanding, and again, like Adam said, it was never written down, but we were under the understanding we would not have to pay any because it's taken so long to get the water to us. And in that conversation, he talked about someone he's working with across the road, and he didn't say exactly where, and maybe it's in Eugene, maybe it's not Coburg. And he said, oh, yeah, we have to negotiate the SDCs a lot. And I wish he were sitting here right now so he could tell you the same thing. And again, maybe that's not this community, maybe it's a different community. But I found that very interesting because, from our conversation from Adam, no, they're set in stone. So again, this may be a whole different city he's talking about, but he almost indicated like it was just on the other side of the highway with somebody he was dealing with. So I'm just putting that out there as food for thought, if it means anything or not. And yeah, what was my other point going to be? This is what happens when I don't write things down. I'm getting to that age, and I'm sure other people can maybe relate to that too. It's like, oh, what was the other point? Oh, I know. I was going to talk about the transportation and road fees we pay. And this is just an aside. I know this doesn't relate to the water, but a few years ago, we started getting these transportation road fees on our sewer bill. And we pay roughly 600 and something a month on that. And I will say, about a year ago, we were getting lots of potholes on the east side of the freeway where the trucks were going in and out. And I called up Ann at the time and I said, Ann, we've got these horrible potholes. Can you guys take care of that? And she got back to me and she said, well, that's a county road. So no, that's not our responsibility. So here we are paying this money as well every month. And I'm glad it's benefiting you all, but the short distance our customers come from getting off the freeway to our park, that is not a road that's covered with our fees that we're paying. So it's just another, again, I know it doesn't pertain to the water, but it's just one more of those little things that is like, oh yeah, we're paying all this to support the city. Can the city please give us a little break?
I have a
Mr.
question.
Bauman, would you like to speak?
I have a question. And either one of the applicants can take this. But are you alleging that the charges are wrong because it's a legal error? Are you just basically saying, hey, we need a break here? It's purely financial. We don't dispute that you guys have the right to do this. We just feel like we need a break and it's unfair.
So I can let my father speak to that too. I think it's totally legal and I totally understand it. But I think back to the point that we were promised water back in 2004, that's the issue. Because like Adam mentioned, we're not a bare piece of land that we developed and then we're hooking up once we get all developed. We had land in place. We had needs for water at that time. Not as crucial as they are now, but we definitely wanted the city water. So point taken, no, we do not believe those fees are illegal.
in any stretch of the imagination. It's just, we feel like had this been done back in the day, our fees would have been much less.
Do you have a follow-up question or of the
No.
applicant?
So maybe your father could speak to this. To the best of your neutral recollection, sir, what was the agreement that you signed up to?
Well, I'll tell you exactly how it went down. The city manager at that time came over and talked to me at our RV park. And he said that they would like to annex us. And he gave the reasoning for the annexation was that they could provide us with water and sewer. Water was an important thing to me, and so I readily accepted his explanation. But it turns out that what he alleged was in the pipeline for us wasn't in the pipeline. There was no concrete plan to bring water to us, and there was no concrete plan to bring sewer to us. So I bid on that based on a lie. And I don't know if any of you now were here when Mike was there, but that's how this all started. It was based on a maybe a naive approach for me to accept the city manager's word that we would get water. And he pointed up at the hillside and said, that's where the reservoir is going to be. We've got the funding for it. And next year you'll have water. And we needed water.
Well, thank you for that. Speaking as the new guy, your context is very helpful.
Thank you.
Somewhat related, but just a clarification. When the annexation proposal was being made, if there was residents in that area that objected to that, was that a killer for the annexation, or is the approval of annexation apart from the impact on the?
Are you speaking?
Well, all I can tell you is that it was the fastest annexation that was ever done, to my knowledge, in the city of Oregon. I mean, in the state of Oregon.
Mhm.
And the city manager at the time came over and told me that they were doing it on a expedited basis, and they sure did. They got it done very, very quickly.
It would have been slowed if there was opposition from
That's
the
correct.
impacted people.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Oh, sorry. Yes, there are opportunities in a land use annexation where notice is given and abutting property owners can object and appeal, and it can end up going to ultimately LUBA.
Counselor Wells.
You understood when your property was annexed that ultimately you would be paying SDC fees when you connected to the water system, correct? I mean, you weren't under the impression that you weren't going to pay any.
No, I was not under that. But I also, at the time we bought it, we had our own domestic water and we had our own fully approved water treatment or sewage treatment plant, and that was very expensive. And so I was happy to hear that we maybe could get some more water, because water over there is hard to find.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
So when you said you had to abandon your septic, your sewage treatment facility, was that forced upon you, or
Yes.
was that done voluntarily?
That was forced on us.
See,
Everyone had to abandon there.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So I do have a question.
yes,
Mr. Williams, it is in your packet that you provided to council, to the city. And it's dated July 7th of 2017. And it's an email to Ms. Heath and who was our city administrator at that time.
Right.
And in it, in the third paragraph down, it does say that you just put in a new well for domestic water, and that you think it would be fair to allow us to use the existing system for 5 years before requiring us to hook up to city water.
Yes.
So that was dated 2017. So that would have been, so 5 years from that date was your
Right.
request. to
But
hook
you
up.
understand that we've been over there since 2001. We've owned that since 2001. And we didn't have any city services during that time. So we
Because you
had,
weren't part of the city.
pardon,
You were not part
We
of
were
the
not part of
city
the city.
initially. Yeah,
that's correct.
got it.
I have
Question?
a question,
Counselor Smith.
and I'm not sure if this is for you or for Adam, but when Mike Hudson was the city manager and did go to Mr. Williams, was it a part of the the revised master plan that was going to install the well?
I think that would be a question for Mr. Hanks.
And I know it's a while back, but when Mr. Williams said the city promised him water in 2004 and that was a lie, was it, in reading through this, my take was that was the plan and that was the hope. And then that well was not able because of geologic reasons. The reservoir was not able to go there, which further delayed them receiving water. Is that?
Yeah, that gets into what I mentioned earlier is kind of some of the micro history that I'm not fully aware of the order of operations of all this, but generally, and it's in the material that Mr. Williams and Lisa provided. There is reference to the master plan. I think that's what Mr. Williams referred to earlier too. The master plan was nearing completion, and that there were a number of projects that were lined up and did have, there was a reference to some funding. It didn't say exactly what and all of that, but there was a reference to funding. And that, I think the anticipation was that, in somewhat short order, and when we talked in our meeting, my version of short order, having, worked in public sector and infrastructure, public infrastructure for 30 something years, we might have a different definition of quickly. But certainly we don't have a definition of 22 years, but the chain of events that had to occur in that master plan in 2004, it would have been very challenging to get water that quickly. But that is part of the record of the annexation, that the master plan was nearing completion, which included provisions for infrastructure that would provide water. So the details about how long and what particular stumbles happen in what order, I don't have a great one for you. But yeah, then ultimately, as we all know, the reservoir did not occur. There were some geologic issues, and I think even wells, as Mr. Williams just referenced, wells on that side for exploration for additional water supply at different times in Coburg's history have not been very fruitful to move forward on either. That helps.
Can I say one more thing?
Ms. McIntosh.
And then
we're going to
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
wrap this
In
up.
response to your talking about that email though, I will say we had to drill another well because we needed the water. It wasn't because we just randomly wanted another well. We were running into water issues, which, then led to his, can we possibly delay it because we just spent this money? We would have, again, rather had your water the whole time. So I just want to make that point clear.
Sure, I think that's understood, but thanks for that clarification. It has been a long process. I
It
don't think
has.
any one of us would argue that. That is for sure. Anything else? Any questions that you have for Mr. Williams or Mr. Hanks? Jason?
I had just one question for Mr. Williams. and I apologize to make you keep getting up, but just one quick question.
It's all right.
When you were annexed in, were you under the impression that you would pay into the fees and that you knew what you were getting into? Did you have a clear understanding that you would pay SDC fees?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Anything else?
I have one question for Adam. On, you state, back in, I don't see the date here, 2019, the city made a connection was initially planned for then to be connectioned immediately upon completion of the extension, but was ultimately delayed for reasons outside of the control of Premier RV. At the wetlands, what were the?
Primarily, yeah. I think that was in the midst of funding of the water loan that we're working on now that we're drawing down. So it was right in that window, I think, of probably feeling confident about the funding part. But then, then that the wetland delineation came up and slowed that considerably for everyone.
Anything else? Oh, Councilor Engelbrecht.
What, it seems to me, and I'm not as familiar with this, but it seems to me that, 20 years is probably longer than most processes where a landowner is annexed between that time and, between the time they're annexed and when the time that they're able to hook up to city services. I would assume it's generally quite a lot shorter than 20 years. 10 years more typical?
Yeah, it
or-
depends. It depends on, economic conditions, of a piece of land that's annexed for light industrial, and then 2008, 2009 happens, and, everything falls out from financing and it can sit vacant. That it's annexed with an understanding of development. Some communities have a land that the annexation section of their land use code requires a land use development application and permit concurrent to the annexation. So that's how some communities have resolved this, by saying you only can be annexed in conjunction with what are you developing. So I think that's to it. There's interest on both sides. Different communities, would say that we're annexing this in for housing, and we don't want to wait for you to have great market conditions. We're annexing it to get housing stock. So then they marry the two pieces together in their land use code and say, yes, your annexation meets all of this, and you need to have a development approval approved and ready to go as well. That typically resolves the issue of annexation and 5, 10, 15, 20 years later development. Because with codes that don't have that, it leaves it up to the property owner.
And in this case, though, the property was already developed. And so, but thank you. I appreciate that information as well. But I guess from the perspective of a city or a government entity, if the property is already developed, but the city has to do quite a bit of capital work, like boring under the interstate, for example. If there's a lot of construction that the city has to do more than usual, I would still speculate that it might, again, not drag out for 20 years.
Correct. Yeah, I would say typically annexation, some of the criteria is that infrastructure is available. And again, that's different cities have different annexation ordinances. This used, as Mr. Williams said, it used a different annexation process. I'm not as familiar with this process. So my experience with annexations are, it doesn't get annexed unless there are utilities there, or there's a development agreement that says you can't develop until those get there to get the timing right. So utilities nearer by. And different cities have different definitions of what nearby might be.
Counselor Wells.
We're in discussion now.
No, I would entertain a motion prior.
Oh.
Actual go into discussion.
Well, yeah, if there's more, maybe if there's more questions that you have, because yeah, typically if you get into motion, then you're deliberating and usually it just amongst yourselves, but.
Counselor Lehman.
So on option 2, where the last sentence says that Premier to be connected immediately upon completion of the extension, but was ultimately delayed for reasons outside the control of RV. Was it also outside the control of the city?
Yes, I mean, I don't know about the entirety of the timeline, but at least it was delayed because of at a minimum, it was delayed because of the wetland issues. There may have also been some shorter term delays, just in the more normal type delays of actual the project, how long it would take to get.
Was there a delay because of budget issues?
I don't know the exact timing between the decision and when the water loan, the exact timing of that. Yeah, I guess going back up to the main question, what is probably clear that none of the delays were from Premier RV. The question is whether or not the delays were in the city's control or not. Probably a mixed bag, but I would lead probably more higher ratio of it being outside the city's control than in. But that's
Final question on that. So help me determine if it was outside the control of the city. In 2018 or 2019, did we have a budget line item for this work, or was it all contingent upon obtaining financing, or was it partly within our general fund budget or water budget?
my understanding is the project was dependent upon financing, funding.
Financing.
Yeah, which is typical for a project of that size. It would be hard pressed to cash fund that. So I would assume that it was part of that package. And I think it probably was an element that brought in that loan that we're still working on.
Could I make one more comment?
Yes, if that's your final comment, Mr.
My final
Williams.
comment. Well, I just want to say that you guys are in a difficult position, but our position is that we were misled, badly misled, and we're bearing the whole economic burden of that. And I just want to appeal to your conscience. That's not right. And you guys didn't employ the man that drug us into this. But he was an employee of the city, and I think the city has to take some responsibility for what he did.
Counselor Wells.
I'm sorry. It's hard to make a motion when we've got 3 motions to consider.
We would have to.
And then, so how do you do that? I mean, I'd like to continue on discussion here, but
When the motion is made, then we can continue to discuss the merits, and either that motion can be passed with a second, or it can be
amended.
rescinded and a different motion put on the table.
So
That is
Well,
my
I was gonna say,
understanding
so
at this
we make a
point.
motion, then we get into discussion. If we decide that we're going to amend that
No
motion,
one
we
would
can do
second
that.
that. That's correct.
Otherwise,
That
discussion
is-
depends.
I believe I am correct. on
Yes, you are. Procedurally, the intention there is to get some focus to a conversation that can otherwise kind of just keep circulating. And so,
Right.
right.
I would like to make a motion. I move to authorize.
Can I ask one final question of Adam?
Yes.
You
Yes,
talked about merits,
merits.
Yes.
and demerits of these things. So of the 3 motions, what do you see as your merits and deficiencies?
Of each of the 3? it depends on how you want to look at it, what perspective you're coming from. That's why I didn't put a recommendation in the staff
Not up
report.
to staff to make.
Right.
recommend-
So, but I think what I try to do in each of those is to say there's a rationale, and the merits and rationale are similar, but they're different things. They're not quite the same thing. I would say the merits or the rationale for the charging the current is that is by the book, code driven. It doesn't take any of the history of this into account. But maybe it's a merit. That's also a knock against, depending on how you want to look at it. The other, the middle route is that, a merit or a justification or a rationale is that is when the city in earnest did what initiated what Mr. Williams claims, and said, I'm not disputing it. I don't mean claims that way. That what occurred in 2004 at the time of annexation, or the question about annexation, it became somewhat infrastructure wise, project wise, initiated and realized in the 1819 range, when engineering was done and the loan commitments were made. That's a legal leg to stand on, right? To say that, yep, that's a time when then water was somewhat expected to be imminent there. What happened caused another time, but that I could see from their perspective. The merits of the 2004, again, maybe Mr. Williams spoke to his take on the merits more so than I have, but that the annexation of an already developed project or property and language in the annexation document itself that speaks specifically to a nearly completed master plan that we can look at and say that, yeah, serving water, the infrastructure, the projects required to serve water to that side were in that master plan that was referenced in 2004, that was completed. That master plan was adopted soon after. So that part was done. And that was probably, again, I don't want to speak for the applicant, that probably was the last time those things were in sync in terms of what was promised to or committed to occur and did occur, and the rest of it then falls away. But I think, the issue of impact, which is what SDCs are, the fact that they haven't been connected from 04 to now does, from a putting on the water board, if you're counting yourselves as just representing the water customers of Coburg, it's speculative, but you could say that the fact that they weren't connected all of these years deferred a whole lot of infrastructure costs to all customers of Coburg, because we might be looking at well number 4 now already, or well number 5. We may need that $6 to $8 to $10 million elevated reservoir might have been required earlier had a larger customer like this come on. So that could be construed, could be put in somebody's ledger in comparing the decision you have to make as a merit to saying that the community, the water customers actually net out benefiting by that, because only the SDCs only pay for the growth component of that. So the rest of the water customer base would be paying the vast majority of capital project for even things that have growth in it. So, flip side is if they were there since and connected since 04, the city would have had monthly water revenues substantial as a larger customer. So a lot of, and that's why I omitted some of that stuff from here, because it depends on how you want to look at merits, but that definitely I think is legitimate to put into play.
Councilor Lehman.
I move to authorize the city administrator to calculate and invoice the water SDC associated with Premier RV Resorts pending connection to the municipal water system based on SDC calculation tables at the time of extension of the municipal water system to the east side of Interstate 5, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Lehman and a second by Councilor Fox. And I'm going to ask for an aye vote on each.
whoever wants to go can go.
Sorry, I was thinking that the next step would be to discuss.
Okay.
Allow for
All right,
discussion.
all right, up for discussion. You are correct. And
Yes.
thank you for that correction.
Not going on.
Mayor Bo.
Counselor Bowman, do you have a question?
No, that was my question.
All right,
We're
thank
good.
you. Thank you. Counselor Smith, discussion.
I think first of all, when I look at this process, and I wasn't a part of it years ago, it's been extraordinary. I agree with you. And I also look at the SDCs and I feel that the 2018 year is reasonable. It's a compromise. They did have to drill a well at a $50,000 expense, and it's a give and take, but I feel that that is a reasonable SDC charge, given all that the city and Premier has been through over the last, that it's a nice middle.
Well,
Thank you, Councilor Wells. I would almost, if I was going to suggest a different motion, I would have gone with 2004 after hearing the discussion tonight and reading the materials, based on the fact that it was an already developed property when it was annexed, and there was already a need for water and wastewater at that time. And it's generally, I think the city should have had more progress toward some of that infrastructure built before starting to tax the property. And so that would be my rationale for saying I would even consider the 2004 SDC in this case. I think it's an unusual case for it to take 20 years to have the city infrastructure extended to the property.
extenuating circumstances, the I-5 freeway that runs right down. Counselor Wells.
First, very sympathetic to what's happened to you. I know you probably, there's no good reason for you to have wanted to be annexed if you weren't promised water and sewer. I understand that. I mean, why would you? Except for the fact that your park becomes significantly more valuable with city services than it does operating on a septic system and private wells.
Can I challenge that a minute?
No,
we're
I've been
done
there
now.
and it's okay. All right, I get it. I mean, but you had intended on paying SDC fees and no promises were made to you as to when the water would be available to you. No, well, I know I understand that, Paul, and I would have done the same thing in the exact same thing that you did. Because at least then you're in the queue. At least you know that somewhere down the road, you're going to have access to sewer and access to water.
Discussion should be.
Yep,
No, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yep, okay. So I understand why he did it. I would have done the same thing, but he probably anticipated that this would have been done a long time before it was. But I think doing it on the middle ground here is a good compromise. I don't think he had any idea that it would be delivered in 2004, 2005, even 2010. But the fact that he annexed himself into the city allowed him to be able to connect to city sewer and city water when it was available. That was a smart thing to do. Yeah, it costs a lot of money. I understand that, but in the long run, you're going to be a lot better off having city services there than
In us.
we're all talking, all right? And so I think the second option is probably the most fair. My opinion.
Counselor Bowman.
I am going to bring this to a head. Hopefully, I make a motion that Premier be charged based on the 2018 SDC rate.
We
already have a motion.
We had that motion on the table,
Oh.
so after discussion, we will vote on that.
Oh,
But thank
okay.
you. It does tend to sort of round around a little. No, you're fine.
Mayor Bells, we've had indications of at least 3, 4 plus second. I call for the question.
Oh, are you ready to take a vote? All those in favor for approving the motion, which is signing the SDCs as of 2018 at 2018 rates? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Any abstains? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Mayor, can I clarify who is the second on the motion?
That was Counselor Fox. Counselor Lehman was the first and Counselor Fox was the second. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. We appreciate your input and patience. Okay, next agenda item. The Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee final recommendations, and I think Mr. Hanks, you have those for us.
You're there.
Oh.
You turn the air conditioning down a little bit?
Are you getting cold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
it's-
opened
I thought you might,
it's long.
you might turn it colder.
Yeah.
Turn it down. Like, whoa, you really want it. Mayor, before I start,
I'm so sorry.
I've got some handouts that relate to this item that it was kind of red folder-ish, but
Okay.
we've had a lot going on, so.
We have had
Yeah.
just a bit.
It's not, with this item, the recommendations of the committee are.
what if you use an order?
Okay. You just made a brilliant. I'll hold, I'll wait.
We all suffer.
Wait, do you agree with that?
Do you have one more slide?
We're pretty.
I do, right? Right here.
Mayor.
I'll be right
So.
back.
This is taking a while.
Okay, I think there's some on the table.
Yep.
Are you okay?
Absolutely.
We have an unofficial 2-minute recess here. All right.
Yeah, well, it went on for.
I have a question. Even though we have an unofficial recess, this is 1 of 2 and yet. Oh, I see. It's 1 of 2. Okay.
I'll explain when we get back on.
Format differences.
Okay, there are 2 different handouts for 2 different spots on the agenda.
But I'd have done the same thing.
And thank you, Councilor Fox, for your guidance
Oh, that's okay.
on this opening.
Okay.
So there you go. That's what we're all about. Teamwork, offset the cost.
Yeah, a lot to get your head around, but I like it, challenge.
We're still recording and live.
What does that mean?
I just, that we should be having sidebar.
Oh, gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you.
My glasses. Can you just read it to me?
Okay. Good, that's best. I like it.
The final recommendation. Education safety ad hoc committee for completed work prior. Council designated the date of June 30th.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanks.
May 2020, unanimous approval of the final recommendation document. It is finally.
Okay, the handouts, there are 2 handouts that I provided. One applies to this agenda item, which is the staff report cover memo to the actual recommendations document, which is the meat of the conversation tonight. This is a formality. I like to have the council communication go with everything, but it just summarizes the document that is in front of you. And then the second item is the city administration report that's for later in the agenda to discuss. Just wanted to hand them out at the same time. So the item here in front of you is the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee final recommendations. And as you recall, Mayor Bell initiated this ad hoc committee in October. We talked about it in September, initiated it in October, appointed members, citizen members to the ad hoc in December, and began meeting. We actually ended up meeting, I think the ice storm messed up our first meeting. So we had 2 meetings in February, but stayed on track. The charge in the resolution for this ad hoc committee was to evaluate a series of staff provided issues and potential ideas and recommendations, vet them, kind of try to prioritize them and add to them, improve them, et cetera. And really the focus, as the name of the committee suggests, it's transportation safety. And really functionally what occurred was an extra emphasis on pedestrian safety. And of course, regulating vehicles is a part of the package, but in attempts or in the object being to enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety as well through town by having vehicles slower and more controlled and all of that. So this was staffed by, you see on the top of the memo, myself, Brian Harmon, the Public Works Director, Megan Winter, the Planning Director, and Larry Larson, the Police Chief. And it was really fun from the staff side for all of us to kind of all share in that staffing and bring each of our expertise to the table. And before we get into the document, I would just say that the group was excellent. It was a really fun and engaged group that asked questions, added to this, really gave some good perspective. And as was discussed when they were appointed to the committee, they live in different parts of town. So it was really good to have different perspectives from physical geography. So I think it was a good process all the way around, and having the due date of the end of June, the end of the fiscal year, to complete it, I think also was great. It was great for us from the staff perspective. We couldn't dilly-dally, the committee couldn't dilly-dally, and in front of us is a report and a set of recommendations. So the request in front of council is to review and approve with any suggested edits, additions, the final recommendations of the ad hoc Transportation Safety Committee. And what, just procedurally, the majority of these recommendations, as we've discussed prior, and I'm sure you're aware that the Pearl and North Willamette are county owned and managed streets. It's their right of ways. So the majority of nearly all of the recommendations involve us talking with Lane County about the ability to implement these recommendations. And that was talked about with the committee, but we also didn't want to worry too much about that. Are they easy? Are they slam dunks? Are they big problematic things from a county regulatory construct? But we talked about, we clearly from staff, we had some clues as to, which ones are, have a better shot of making it through and which ones are a little more challenging. So we can go through all of the recommendations in the 3 categories. But what I think is useful, and we talked about it a number of times in the committee meeting, is the big picture request out of this, or the outcome we're looking for, is really enhanced pedestrian safety, enhanced bicycle safety, and controlled, more regulated control, lowering the speeds, and more careful navigation of vehicles. And really what that, accomplishes, one of the driving concerns or problems that I've heard consistently since I've been here is the throughput of commuter traffic compared to the local traffic, and the challenges that presents to our transportation system. And a lot of this focus, I think, accomplishes three things. It's community livability by having all modes of transportation available. It gets to what Councillor Bowman was talking about early of really accessibility. There's much more to be done, but this provides access across town more readily. It engages, as studies have shown, bicycle and pedestrian traffic are big economic development impacts, benefits. They drive economic development for our downtown, for all downtowns that have studied. And it has also the effect, we think, this is anecdotal, of in non-technical terms, annoying commuter traffic. It makes it, there's additional crosswalks, there's lower recommended speed limits on the converting North Willamette to a business district, allows the reduction of speed from 25 to 20. So really, those are kind of some of the macro things that I think this grouping of recommendations accomplishes. And the bigger picture, the bigger solutions to commuter traffic is the as we've talked about in kind of some of the Lane Act conversation that we've had recently, and in others with the feasibility study of the call it anything but a bypass. Yeah, alternate route. It's not a bypass. The alternate route at the north end that really, probably that has a larger, percentage impact on commuter traffic, obviously, than this set of recommendations does. But I think it's worth noting that it's not little what these kind of things can accomplish in a downtown. And as we talk about some of them that increase pedestrian activity, safety on Pearl Street, the same thing for Pearl. So I just want to be sure that that was relayed to council. And then the other part is that I think is nearly equally important is having them as a package. Going to Lane County one at a time for individual requests is really challenging. It's challenging for us. It's challenging for them. It makes it harder, I think, for them, for us to have a compelling argument one at a time. This provides Lane County with a little more context to say what we're trying to accomplish, bigger picture, maybe not transportation safety, TSP style system plan, but what we're trying to do with all of our various requests, and it packages them. And it really helps us when we go to staff of Lane County to say, here's what we're trying to do. And invariably, there's going to be a few of these that they're going to have concerns with. They're going to have pushback regulatory wise and all of that. We will be able to report back to council and say, here's ones that we can get quick action on. Here's ones that we, are probably going to have to just set aside for a while. And then there's probably another bucket that are ones that we can do. We just have to budget for them. That can't be done immediate from a financial standpoint, but can be done regulatorily. So that, I think, is another really big asset with this. And the final icing on the cake to me is really the citizen input that comes along with this. It's a council endorsed, so it's not staff just trying something that, hey, individuals have asked us about this, we want to try and get it done. We have citizen involvement, citizen-driven recommendations. We have whatever we end up here tonight with a council-endorsed recommendation also. So we have a governing body that's in support. It really changes our ability working with Lane County. And Lane County is not the evil regulator. They just have regulations they have to follow as well. And the more we can provide them about kind of our seriousness level and how the whole system, we'd like the system to look and work, I think the better off we are in having them engage with us and solve it. And to that end, we have kept them up to date on this process as it's gone forward, given them they actually provided some of the information that helped us put forward some of the recommendations. So all that being said, what I think we end up with here in front of you tonight is a really good roadmap for us on relatively low cost, high benefit recommendations.
Is that then on page 230? Is that is the draft recommendations? Did we end up with that as being?
Let me get to it, I'm sorry.
There's a lot of information in this
There.
packet.
Uh,
You have 195.
no, let's go backwards. That was the, just, an attachment that was the reference from their
Okay.
meetings. Let me back you up to the document is.
194.
194.
What page?
I had to find it. I'm there.
So
It starts on 195.
Yes, 194. Yes.
All right, we have it twice, so that must be it.
Yes, so that is the final document. So the bullet, the document you referenced there was for a
was the
meeting, the
draft.
prior meeting of a draft to make sure that we had the topics right. So the document itself here, starting on page 194, has 3 categories: pedestrian crossings, the actual specific intersection up here to the north of us, North Willamette and Van Dyne, and then it has speed limits and signage, and then an other that didn't really fit any of the 3 buckets. I could go through each of them. We also have both the mayor and Councilor Lehman were members of the non-voting members of the ad hoc and were attended all, I believe, or most, if not all, of the meetings as well. So they can speak to some of the conversations and dialogue. But the objective here was to kind of describe what the tool or the implementer that what we're requesting, list its purpose, and then give a little bit of a take, not super deep dive, but a little take on the implementation issues and timeline for each of them, to give a little bit of an ability for council to kind of sort, how quickly we think we can accomplish and what the potential obstacles might be. So I can handle the rest of it any way you want. Go through them. I can take questions.
I have a question.
Oh,
Counselor Smith also.
which
Go
was
ahead.
first? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay. I was just curious, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit here. I don't know, but I was curious about one specific recommendation. By the way, I'd comment, I thank you, everybody that was involved. I think this, to Adam's point, sounds like it was a really successful committee, good effort, great to get community people involved.
Which page are you? Or
I was gonna look at page number 196 at the bottom, number 4, the designating Willamette Street as a business district.
Mhm.
My question there is, I'm assuming we are not talking about land use zoning in that scenario, where this is a different type of designation or?
Yes, it's transportation specific. So there's I think it's not an ORS, it's an OAR, a more organ administrative rule that streets that have certain characteristics can be designated as a business district transportation element. And so, yes, it doesn't in any way interact with our zoning code. And also it isn't the entirety of North Willamette. It has to, there will be, we didn't have it nailed down what that boundary will be. But my guess is that it wouldn't extend any south of Coburg Pizza, maybe even a little bit north of that. And we're probably near the other end of it. Although we go into a corner, our goal would be to say, hey, how can we get it? How far can we get it? If we can blend, if we can take it from there and actually turn the corner to the 20-mile-an-hour school zone, that's not a bad plan. I don't know that we'll get there, but that's what the recommendation, that item.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just the reason I was asking is, of course, if the land use zoning, we have some of North Willamette is residential zoned. And so obviously to make a change to that would be a very big process that,
Right.
That we probably don't want to do. So I just wanted to clarify. I
Yeah,
see
using
that's
some
what
of
you're
the same,
talking about.
using some of the same language in the transportation world, but
Right.
it doesn't overlap to our zoning code. Yeah.
Smith.
Given that as a business district, my personal opinion is it would be really nice to see that start almost at our city limit sign now, because in driving that and turning that corner to Coburg Pizza, cars whip around that so fast, and there's so many times that there's a person just right there, so the slower we can bring that, and then if Mr. Sheehan starts to operate his business as well, I would like to see that part included in the business district. if possible.
There's a state definition, so we are only able to, we're gonna ask for the maximum that this definition allows. And we'll update you as we go on what that is, but I just want to put a reality in there that it's a subset of North Willamette. It won't be the whole thing. I just don't know how much exactly.
We'll push it about as
Yeah.
far as-
Yeah.
We'll request that.
Yeah.
Counselor Fox.
Two things. One to follow up on Nightmare Corner.
Yeah, terrible.
The East Dixon part is ours, right? It's up to,
Yes.
because I've brought that up before, having a yellow thing, because I've come around and cars, in addition to pedestrians, are sometimes 2/3 of the way there, and I'm like, and fortunately, they put a big, nice rock there so that you're not gonna go up onto the pedestrians, but it's like, there's a heartbeat there, and so something that could separate the cars and understand that you don't go that far. Anyhow, that's just an aside.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'd like to add when I just quickly answered yes, and of course, the real answer is a little more nuanced. It's yes, but, so all of our side streets are ours that feed into that. But, they come into the Lane County right of way of North Willamette, which extends depending.
8 feet or 10
Yeah,
feet.
it extends into it. So even if we're doing crosswalks that, as you'll see on the crosswalk section, when we're talking about crosswalks that go parallel to North Willamette, that are on our named streets, those are often, almost always are going to be in the right of way of Lane County. So we still have to, even though it's local street, until we get off that right of way completely, it's still a jurisdictional issue.
Okay, so that would.
Yeah,
fly.
But there are, I think it's still, we will note that as, other traffic, safety implements or tools that we can use to try and address that.
And so for the future, because I love the Pearl and Coleman flashing light concept. What's the street, with the flags? Is that Mackenzie?
Right out here is Locust. Locust has the,
Mackenzie has now a flashing light.
Yes.
Locust
With
flashing
flashes,
light.
okay, yeah.
yeah, the actual handheld flags are right here on Locust.
Okay, yeah, so it'd be good to have another flashing, no, yeah, where the crosswalk is that we argued about so bad, there used to be flags there by chiefs.
That's
Yeah.
Mackenzie.
That's the
Okay,
flash.
Mackenzie.
Yeah, yeah.
So two things on that, that would be great to have another flashing thing there and inactive, whatever, but
Yeah,
future discussions. The third thing is based on what you said with that curious thing where when you pave a road, and this is on our streets, Kenzie has been paved on both sides over the years, and it's gone in. You go right up to the middle, there's about 10 feet. It's the original unpaved section, right where the hump of the old railroad track is. So that's eventually gonna deteriorate. We're gonna have to fix that little strip. I've said my piece.
Counselor Bowman.
On the crosswalk, yes, that would be particularly great for folks who have reduced mobility. However, one thing I have noticed when the crosswalk went in, the flashing light crosswalk went in across Mackenzie, there needs to be, I think, some consultation with the design and accessibility beforehand, before we actually put it in, because I have difficulty pressing the button. And it would be very nice and very advantageous, as well as I think, making sure that we are obeying, the accessibility rules too. Because I used it the other day and I almost had to give up. Which most of the times I have to use the undeclared, basically take your life in your hands and wait for somebody to stop for 10 minutes. which has happened to me multiple times.
Point taken.
Yeah, Counselor Bowman, I think that's a great point. And all of these are still going to be under the permit authority of Lane County, which then they do have ADA standards they have to adhere to. I think it'd be great to dive a little deeper on that. I think the one that we're talking about was a bit of a retrofit. It's still.
It definitely was.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can tell you that it was.
Yep, and I know what you mean. And, I think as we're talking about Pearl and Coleman, the reason that I think we have some regulatory question marks about can we get that through? And then we also, it's a larger project cost probably than McKinsey.
Sure.
Because it's going to require some of the newest ADA regulations that I would hope and expect would address some of what you're talking about. But overall, point well taken that we definitely will be sharing the ADA design requirements.
And I would be happy to put my 2 cents in and do the research myself, because that's something I did for the school district when I was in school. So I was the direct advisor to the superintendent for accessibility.
That's excellent. Yep, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure that we can utilize that asset in some of these transportation issues for sure. We'll let Lane County know that.
Just an aside,
Counselor Smith.
when we're looking at, first of all, I think this is amazing and they did it in a very short period of time. It's a very professional, well thought out product to be able to hand to the county. When you look at Coleman and Pearl, I don't know if it would help for us to get that, but part of our master plan states that we will have safe access to parks.
Yes.
And the south side of town has no parks, so
Yep.
that's that, and also the safe routes to schools maybe could play into that crosswalk as well.
Agree 100% on both those. That's right in our head. I think at least, I think both of those were talked about a little bit at the committee level. That's great points. Yep. That's what we think that's a real strong contender for getting that approved. What was a challenging one that you don't see on here? Don't want to bring the negativity in, but was and we talked about it quite a bit with the committee, was reducing the speed on Pearl. It flat out is that's kind of a non-starter from the regulatory requirements, the definition of the street, the traffic count, everything about the distance from the interchange, all of those things add up to that being not able to be done. And Lane County told us that from the get-go, because that was one of our first short list before we even had the committee fully up and running. So that the alternative is to kind of take the awareness and annoyance combo with the lighted beacon crossing that functionally will have some effect. And I think over time we might be able to get some changes to get that speed limit down. This package doesn't have it, but that doesn't mean, and I think strategically it's good that it doesn't, because it was such a clear problem from their regulatory framework, but we can revisit that over time. Probably partly as development changes on that corridor as well.
I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry, I added one extra.
But just on the subject of speed limits in general, it would be very nice to see some selective traffic enforcement in our problem areas. Just, the state sometimes does a DUI blitz or a distracted driving blitz from time to time. And it would be nice if we could sort of make an effort to blitz those occasionally, because I have nearly been taken out a time or two. Well, actually, more than twice.
And I believe our police force does do those periodically, Counselor Bowman.
That's not, I just wanted to put it out there that
the thing is, when people see a police car,
Yeah,
they tend to slow down.
Yes.
By the rules. And
absolutely.
So there's that yin and that yang, but certainly I think all of us would absolutely agree with you.
Just to add to that, one of the things that is in this document, I think it's in the other, is, where are we? It's in here, is the increased utilization of the speed truck, the trailer, the trip count
Yeah.
and speed trailer. Because what a lot of the conversation was, is we all had some, everybody of the citizen committee members had some anecdotal take on what should happen and what is happening. And really, which was great to have Chief Larson, also Sergeant Lee attended several of them too, to give a real on the ground take of enforcement about traffic enforcement. Increasing that and spreading that around and keeping and collecting that data over time is another commitment here that doesn't involve Lane County. That's what we can do ourselves. And Chief Larson is, he was all over that one. And we've already seen it, as you probably saw just a few weeks ago, down near Coburg Pizza. It's rotating around, gets awareness. And we collect data to be able to take what we think is anecdotal and then actually have data to say, is that accurate or not, is what we feel actually happening. So that's a component of this as well that we don't have to ask Lane County about.
Councilor Fox.
But we share it with Lane County.
Yes.
So the real question is, and it must be cost prohibitive, but I remember when my daughter was first driving, my youngest daughter was first driving, and I'd be going through, coming to an intersection and the light turns yellow and I was slowing down and she'd go, punch it. I would not punch it. And she'd go, Grandpa. And then one day we got a ticket in the mail from Salem. And she goes, I can't believe I got a ticket. I didn't run the red light. I did not run I made it. I said, did you read the ticket? She goes, violence. It's a speeding ticket. You made it. So, but there wasn't a cop. Which, this is great for these spot on things, but there's not enough human beings and stuff, and we don't have the money for a police force that side. How much of one of those things that we could spy on people, but hit a car when it's flailing through town? Because your point, I've been out Blue Bayou and bunch of motorcycles come through and they are so slow, my brain's rattling, and then some Yahoo comes through at 35 miles an hour. I'm just curious.
Okay.
So
your question is, how much are the speed, the cameras that regulate speed or non-compliance?
Yeah,
costs?
There,
Yes.
number of facets there, and I don't have a ready answer on dollars and cents, but there's more to it than the equipment. Right. So there's the equipment, but then there's all the administrative component to be able to get to the DMV, all the database subscription you have to do, all of the software you have to do, all the automated billing and all of those things. It's not out of the question to have a conversation about that. There's also plenty of policy implication, issues to address is, do you want to do that? And what is it actually accomplishing? We could get a bunch of data, and I'm positive that Chief Larson has opinions as well about the effectiveness and all of that. We don't have anything put together now. We could on the spot hit something, or we could follow up with another. Why don't we follow up in another city administration report with just some tidbits?
Probably for the sake of time,
Yeah.
knowing that we're approaching the
Yeah.
9 o'clock hour. I think that getting more information back on all of the implications along with that.
As you can imagine, it's mostly in larger jurisdictions that have the economy of scale to make that happen. But we'll do some digging for you.
Interesting question.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
And we even put it
Anything
on a
else?
county road.
That's a good question.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah. Anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee final recommendations document dated June 27th, 2024, and direct staff to initiate implementation of the recommendations and provide regular progress reports to council.
A second. So we have a motion by Counselor Ingebretson, and a second by Counselor Smith to approve resolution. Blah. Sorry, I think I need another drink of water. Nope, well, let me come back up here. The Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee Final Recommendation Document dated June 27th, 2024, and direct staff to initiate implementation of the recommendations and provide regular progress reports to council. Is there any further discussion? None, hearing none. I will ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? No, the motion or the motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And now we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. And we have a resolution in our packet adopting the salary and classification schedule for fiscal year 2024-25. Staff report from Mr. Hanks, and I believe we have that handout already.
Yes, that's already in
our
the,
packet.
it's already in the packet, and I'll get better at page numbers, especially on larger packets. We're on page 231.
So much.
Yeah, that's, I'll get better on that. This resolution is primarily procedural. This was the identical information that was provided through the budget process and then on to council when the budget was approved relative to the city's salary and classification schedule. Excuse me. What it entails is the 3.3% CPI or 3.3% COLA based on the CPIW, which is Consumer Price Index. And included in the packet is the resolution, the salary schedule with the 3.3% for all classifications, and then also from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the actual 12-month rolling percentage change. And we were using the December. That's when we started doing budget work, so that comes out in January. We start making our personnel projections in January and February. So the idea is that what you'll see in the future each year is a proposed COLA based on the CPIW December. And that from a kind of administrative perspective, that maintains the salary schedule from getting way out of whack with the market. That is different than step increases. That is just moving the entire schedule kind of in concert with inflationary factor that the CPIW captures. It's procedural in that our charter says that these types of increases can be done and are able to be approved through the budget process. It doesn't require it to be a separate resolution, but that has been the historical norm, is to do an annual resolution. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having it be explicit and making sure you all see this as an important component of the annual budget.
Questions? Comments? Discussion? Councilor Bowman, did you have something to say?
I would like to make a motion.
All right, thank you very much.
I move to approve the resolution fixing the salaries for fiscal year 2024-2025.
Have a motion by Counselor Bowman. Do I have a second?
Seconded. Does that fly?
Yeah. When the mayor reads it back, she'll capture the resolution number in it.
So we have a motion by Counselor Bowman and a second by Counselor Fox to approve resolution 2024-09A, a resolution adopting the salary classification and schedule for fiscal year 2024-25. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Lehman.
Just, I'd like to have this a more readable form.
Yes,
Landscape a little larger.
yes. Sorry about that. It auto converted to portrait there. That was
They tend to
my
do
bad.
that.
Yeah.
When you're reading them on your iPad, if you try and turn it, the whole thing goes, it doesn't work very well.
It is in a larger,
Block, though.
yeah, it is in a larger format in the budget packages as well, but
It doesn't increase the budget to have larger numbers. does it?
point well taken. We'll address that.
All right, any further discussion? Oh, if not, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes 6-0. Right, we have the administrative information reports, and so we have Mr. Hanks will be taking the first two, and Ms. Egbert will be taking the number 10, the general election information, and then Mr. Hanks will finish up with the administrative monthly report.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mayor. The next on the list is what we rip off really fast and internally is the TMDL report, the total maximum daily load, which is a very inside baseball kind of a terminology. This is a water quality mandate from the EPA down to DEQ, down to local jurisdictions. This is year 2 of the 5-year matrix that we have approved by DEQ. I didn't. Brian put together the council communication primarily and gave a really good description of what we are doing activity wise in the various categories. That we're on track. We're hitting our targets and our marks in the 5-year plan. Like I said, this is year 2, so we have 3 more years before we update and do a new plan, which typically coincides with additional regulatory requirements. It never gets easier. It just dials up more, but for a good reason. We are part of the sub-basin Willamette, and this is, important. While we may not have a massive impact, we still should be responsible for our part. And this is what ensures that we stay in compliance with that. Probably the highlight of this isn't the report and the activity. The highlight that goes along with this is that the the grant that I think was already communicated that we got the grant. Brian and Megan have been in interviews with the candidates. We have a preferred, they kind of interview us as well as, because they get usually multiple placement opportunities. So they pick what's right for them, and we pick who we like the most, and then we match it up. So we think we're there. Whoever we get is going to be excellent. The 4 that we interviewed, and they start in September. I think that will really kickstart our TMDL work. It'll also help us in some of our vegetation management plan work that we have for parks and right-of-ways. Really excited to get a rare person in here, and we will definitely bring them to council, and they will be helping us take us next level on the TMDL. No formal motion necessary, just taking a
This is for information.
pause there. Okay.
And
Yep.
if I am correct, and correct me if I'm not, I think that Megan Winter came to us as a rare.
She did.
So we know the quality.
That's right. And she will have a big hand in helping manage and mentor that person. And I think we also, they may not admit it, but I think we scored better because of Megan being involved and knowing how it all works and knowing the people. I think it was, great program, and she's a great example of it.
You have a terrific mentor. Okay, long-term revenue needs forecast.
Yeah, so this is again one that this starts on page 247. Looking for direction. We've hinted a little bit about this topic. We've talked about some of the elements. Really, especially given the time, what we're really looking at tonight is the mayor and I have talked a lot about different methods by which we go through. We set up a process for this to talk it through and to start making some priorities and implementation to at least consider different revenue opportunities. So this is just a request from or just an outline, I guess, of different paths that we could take, process paths. not really here to talk too much unless there's some that I missed on the initial list of revenue enhancements, that bullet list. It's really not to talk about the merits of any of those. And we'll get back to those. That's the meat of the future conversations. But it's really that first bullet. And subsequent to putting together this council communication, the mayor and I were able to meet and probably have a shared recommendation or a preferred path, at least. You know, there's pros and cons to these. We've had great success from the Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee. Downside of that is we want to act on some of these a little quicker than that. I think that would take a while. We'd have to create a resolution to create the ad hoc. We have to place members. It would be well past the timeline. I think we need to at least get the first round of discussion underway. The others are probably timeline wise, time constraints workable. So the recommendation really from the mayor and I, after looking at all these, is the creation of a council subcommittee. That keeps us nimble, that lets us meet at funky schedules. We still have to, notice it. It's still actual meeting of that gets minutes and all of that. But we can meet a little more with flexibility. And I think it better suits the timeline and the topic in front of us. The decisions, obviously, for revenues are not at all made at a subcommittee level. They are just helping organize and bring back something that's way closer to a actionable product for council to act on. Some, my goals, are there's some tiers within these revenue streams that need to be addressed sooner than other ones. Some of them are more straightforward than others. And I think we can have a subcommittee that organizes that and put together something similar to the Transportation Ad Hoc type of a document that lays out kind of the merits, a matrix of pros, cons, who the various revenues hit, what it's expected to get, what are the policy implications, and then we can be off and running as a full council about deliberating on and directing staff of how to put those in front of you, or not, or set them aside and know what that means to set them aside. So that's the recommendation. I think, from the mayor and I looking at the timeline, at the task at hand, and I think just looking for some direction to probably the next meeting, just create it, or unless it's easy to just put together now. But that's up to you all if you want to take that step, but at least get that concept so we can put a selection of a subcommittee on the September meeting.
Reasonable.
Great idea.
I think my only comment is if it is a subcommittee, I think as we go through the process, we need to take extra diligence to make sure the community knows. And I know that's hard.
These would just be recommendations from that subcommittee that would have to come back to council. You're absolutely correct. There needs to be, before we implement any changes to fees, et cetera, that has to be communicated very, very well.
And I know it's hard to get the word out there, but I think that the process itself before it comes to council, because if we don't take the time to deal with questions and concerns throughout the process and the conversation, we're going to spend a lot of time with angry people dealing with it at council. So the more that we could publicize that meeting and invite community input in some way, I think would be helpful.
My take on that one is it's a public meeting, so we will be noticing them and doing the same, at a minimum, the same as we did for the ad hoc committee. So because it's a public meeting, which we're required to. I think from a community input, it's great. I think we should, but the stuff, we're building the stuff for the community to react to. So the ad hoc is really building the stuff that then I think really sets the table for having, more valuable input from the community, because they'll have a sense of what it is, how wide scoping it is, what it gains, what happens if we don't do it. That's often a big part.
Then there's some
um,
meat for the community to really react to.
They have
so-
something to
yes.
react to as opposed to.
And each of
Okay,
these,
that
yeah,
makes
each of
sense.
these probably will come with part of the matrix of each of them. Each of the different revenue options is what kind of community outreach they might need or they might deserve. And that again would ultimately be a decision of council about how we, what we do. A water rate increase, if it's a standard 2%, 3%, no change to the methodology. That's maybe more of a standard. It's in your bill insert in advance and it's pretty straightforward. Something that is, brand new. I think there's a lot more, explaining and justifying or at least giving trade-offs about what that takes. And I think that takes a little more extensive community outreach and engagement. So I think each of them, as we get further, will really tell us, and give you options about how much community involvement you want on each of those pieces. But you're right. I mean, the lead up is so worth it for better understanding, even if it, roils things up, that people need to know what's going on and what's being contemplated.
That feels good. I don't think we can, I think that each of us here would say, I don't think we can over communicate. Vitally important.
Yeah, I would think, I think too, as we try to develop our communications that we're going to provide for the community, it's just really important to try to explain. I don't even know how to say this. Where is the end in sight here? What are we going to do to hopefully prevent ourselves from continually needing to raise revenue? And maybe there is no way to do that. Maybe that's, a pie in the sky idea, but I think what really kind of irritates the public is that it seems like this conversation comes up every 5 years and it's hard to understand. Are we making decisions? Is our city council making decisions that aren't wise? And that's why we keep ending up in this place? Are we trying to do too many capital projects, or what's causing us to get here? I think we owe it to the public to just give a little background and help them understand and come up with a plan for how we try to avoid just constantly running low on money and constantly needing to increase revenue. And I'm not going to talk.
I think you just need to look at all of the costs of everything that has gone up. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
But I agree with Kathy in that.
But it is, I mean,
Doesn't know that.
yeah. Council Lehman.
I go grocery shopping with Cindy every week, and the last 2 weeks, $300 was the grocery bill for each of the last 2 visits. I never had $300 grocery visits before.
Just like, it's sort of the cycle that we're in right now, not just here in Coburg, but in the surrounding communities, in the state, in the nation. One could go as far to say as the world, every nation.
To Councilor Ingebrigtsen's point, I think that's, how we frame it, we need to talk about which revenue streams are for operations and maintenance, keeping the maintaining service levels, like, being honest and saying, you're not getting anything super fancy and new for this. This is keeping the same service levels versus, or also some are going to be investments that are capital, that help get capital improvements or longer term replacement schedule things done. So I think, we can look, and they also need to be, they have a nexus. They need to have a nexus to something. They need to be targeted to say, here is what we're doing with that. And then we have to show, again, like the tree fee has I would say that's an extreme example. It's very detailed about here's the revenue, here's the expense, here's after you have to report it. But that style, that's something to look at as a model. And again, I have opinions about tweaking it, but those are the kind of things I think all of the above are help do what you're describing, because the answer really is that there will be no time when we aren't looking for revenues, because every single expense, unless we completely change our business model and our service level, and that's a conversation as well. It's hand in hand with revenues. But for tonight, hopefully, it doesn't necessarily, maybe it's a head nod. Is the subcommittee seems to be the way to go, that everybody feels comfortable with. And I don't know if we want to do any appointment tonight or do that on September meeting since we don't have August.
Let's do it September meeting.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Would allow each of
Yeah.
you to think about what your level of commitment is.
Yep.
Do you want to be on that? So
And
you can certainly get back to me with your preferences, get back to Adam. And so if you want to be on that committee, let us know and then we'll appoint that in.
Good. And that won't slow us down at all on the staff side to get things prepared. We'll be working towards getting a package so we hit the ground running. Great.
Very much.
And
Okay.
the election piece, I've and made everybody a copy of it. This has got the deadlines on it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Asking for the
I
deadline.
remembered it was sort of the endish of
Right.
August.
Good, and it will
prior
sneak up on
years.
us, so.
Of course, you guys are running again. Know that.
Who's that? Oh, John and Claire and Jason. Oh, Jason's here. Yeah, he's got to run again though.
Nancy, he's already been going.
Oh,
Yes, she did. I said that. So why do we even have to do this? They're gonna stay.
We still have to meet our charter requirements.
Yeah. So anyone who is thinking about, going for reelection or new people, both, all of the above, need to set up an appointment with Sammy. That's probably the easiest
Right.
messaging.
We will probably after Jameson's orientation, we will probably have our first packet because he's already interested in setting up the election process. So I can send an invite to maybe the 3 counselors, and we can group them together.
Yeah. We ready for the final item of the night?
Now push on.
Okay, push on. City administration report. The Johnny Diamond Park major maintenance outline. This was put out on, we put it out on social media. Unfortunately, while we were developing it, social media also put out its own thing about Johnny Diamond. While we were already in the works on putting together how we were going to approach that major maintenance. And, recognize that it definitely was known to staff that things were creeping in and, looking at regular maintenance versus major maintenance versus a full overhaul. And what Brian and I are working on is part of the vegetation management plan is how many, one park per budget cycle to do major maintenance on, maybe 1 or 2 depending. So when you see in future budgets, you'll see with the vegetation management plan will help us figure out which ones, and then there's an expectation. Are we keeping things okay until the major maintenance, time is up, and then we can do something more substantial because it adds up really quickly. This is gonna, this will be, without counting staff time, hard costs will be, $12,000 to $15,000 to do this work. And it's worth it, but it requires that having parkland and maintaining it requires regular maintenance, putting toilet paper in the bathrooms, doing the, regular weeding, mowing, all of the regular stuff that isn't inexpensive, and then major maintenance, and then rehab and replacement stuff. So that's just kind of like the water system and the sewer system. Park systems have similar categories. And so we're hitting it with Johnny Diamond coming up real soon. And that's the layout. Just wanted to mention the Harrisburg Traffic Patrol and Code Enforcement contract. We re-upped that one for a 1 year, added a few more hours. City of Harrisburg has been very happy with the services and the quality of work as we all would expect them to be with our police department. Chief Larson has a great relationship with the city administrator there and council. And they wanted to continue that with a slight increase in hours. That does provide us with some revenue. It's during this fiscal year, as we talked about during the budget, we will be talking with them and council about a a multi-year intergovernmental agreement that they may be interested in more than this. And I think any more than this, we have some, conversations that we need to have here in this room about what does that do to our service levels and what opportunities does it bring? And what do we need to be careful of for making another multi-year commitment? So this is mostly business as usual. A little bit, we've updated our billable hours number to be more accurate to what it costs us to provide those services. The billable hours for Public Works and police were updated this spring and kind of concurrent with some of our salary work. A little more realistic cost recapture. So that's in play, and it's really a testament to our police department, the quality of our department, that another jurisdiction really sees the value in what they bring, but we need to be careful about us being so good. So there'll be opportunities and more information when we talk about a multi-year pros, cons, opportunities, etc. But this one just bridges that gap.
Can we expect that would come back to us?
January, February, probably, maybe December, but probably not. Probably January, February. I would imagine pre-retreat, but right around there. Yep. It's kind of, they have to sort some things out on their end, and we kind of need to know what they're going to volley our way. But I've kind of given some overarching parameters about if we are making a multi-year for something more significant, how we terminate has to be different, because if we have to invest to be able to do it, we have to have a longer tail to get out of it and get our resource, so it creates some different challenges that need much more conversation than just replicating the prior IGA. North Willamette, Macy Harrison, that one is, council approved the contract and selected the contractor last meeting. We are set for pre-construction next Monday. That will give us kind of the more detailed information about the plan schedule, the project schedule, about what's happening week by week. We don't really have that yet. So as soon as that happens, we're then going to get another mailer out to the residents and property owners to let them know a little more. We've sent them one prior about the project and opportunity to look at the design. This will give them the actual functional schedule of what they'll be in for. Exciting to get that underway.
And remembering Counselor Fox's comment of being
Yep.
sort of locked into his property without prior knowledge, I want to be sure that when access to those homes in the front area is blocked off, that we let them know, and if they have issues, I know that Mr. Harmon will certainly be the point person. I don't have any problem at all with having my name and number on that information.
Great.
also, because I would want to know.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Yes, it is on our agenda for the pre-construction. There's several things that are specifically, we are going to make sure get covered that may or may not be the usual thing in other pre-constructions. But yeah, whose responsibility of different communications, how much involvement we're going to have as a staff from a monitoring standpoint, all those things. What is listed as owner complete, so we don't get caught flat-footed on what stuff they assume is us.
Occupant can be different than occupant.
Yep. So we will be making sure all of that gets covered in the pre-construction. And then I would assume we'll see stuff before the end of July. You'll see work going out there, and not too long after that, you'll probably hear work going on. It'll go from seeing it to hearing it. But it's going to be a great final product, I think. The final one on the highlights is just a reminder of our water system work session 2 weeks from tonight. And I listed off what we're planning to cover. The water capacity analysis that Consor completed is a great document. Excited to share, give an update on water projects, the water loan, where we're at, how much we've already bitten off on that, how much we have left, and then when we estimate start paying debt service on that. Water conservation management plan, that one's nearing completion. I'll give you a status update on that and kind of a regulatory overview. And then this one kind of coincides with our revenue conversation just now. Water rates review and recommendations, we'll just kind of give a starter kit on that one. You know, probably no spoiler alert from the staff side. I think, you know, annual utility rate adjustments are the way to go. But that's your call. We'll put some stuff forward for you. And then the other stuff is our regular statistical information that department heads put together for me to slap into this document for you all to review.
One
We're-
question.
Yeah.
What was the storm event emergency in June that required so many
Uh-oh,
hours?
did I get something wrong? There was not one for June. So did I get one in the wrong?
Don't know.
It's pegged all the way out.
The big, long red line.
Oh, that's the above. It doesn't have one on it. That's total. So storm events is 0. That line is, yeah, there were 78, I think, total work orders for the month. Yeah, I think I grabbed one line more than I should have in the.
Yes.
Yeah. They're very colorful, but for me, I had a little hard time reading these charts. But
Okay.
if we could find some better color matches so that it's not the bar graphs or the lines that are difficult for me to read. It's just trying to read the language, the numbers. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know if other council members do that, but I have to strain myself to read that.
Okay.
And then I just don't.
The gray
read
on
it.
blue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I will, I'll make some, I'll play with that. Yeah. Make the contrast better.
Can I go back to the citizen inquiry, industrial noise complaint? June, we haven't had a complaint in that area for a while. Have any more information on that?
No, short answer. Don't know. It appears that it's, you know, occasional, which is always challenging. It's not the constant. So no, don't have any resolution on that one yet, but it's something that, yeah, Megan and I talked about today, and I know there's some history there that I need to get myself up to speed on.
Maybe the same history that I am aware of, but I don't.
I believe it is.
Okay, all right.
And I think it makes a difference if it's occasional at 6 a.m. or is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not diminishing the complaint. I'm saying it's hard for figuring out targeting and getting resolution because of it, but no, I agree with you. Yeah.
Busy police.
Just once again with that police report, I get so tired of hearing, don't bother to call, they don't do anything. I really think there's a balance between how safe people feel in our community when they know what's really going on. Letting the community know what's really going on. I don't know how we can get that out there because people don't pick up the city administrator packet, but I get really tired of seeing it on Facebook and I get tired of hearing it. And the bottom line is nobody comes because you don't call, you just complain on social media. But I think that it would be nice to have those police reports somehow in the hands of the
Perhaps we
public.
can summarize those in some way on the monthly reports that go out to the community. Perhaps that would help. And I too have thought about that, Counselor Smith, and you know, you don't want to get so much information out that people are frightened. But I agree with you. I think that our police force does a remarkable job with the resources at hand. And I think that was one reason that the community member told me what she said about, you know, it was so nice that the police came to the door and said, you know, there's 2 cars with doors open. I said exactly the same thing. I know that there's a lot of negativity that is often there on Facebook, and it doesn't really help.
Well, on the flip side is the other group of people that say, oh, Coburg's so safe. I never lock my car. I sleep with my doors open.
Yes.
At some point, I think there needs to be
So how do
somewhat
you-
of a reality
How do you
check.
balance that? Well, that's right. It's really not 1950 anymore. And I think I made a comment in the last the summer mayor's update that it really isn't Mayberry, folks. There are a lot of things happening. It's that balance and how much information. And so maybe that's something that you and I can talk
Yeah,
about. and
yeah, well,
Larson
yep,
can get
we've
into it too.
we've talked about that. It is a fine line about how much to, yeah, if you really want to know what's going on, whew. Yeah, there's a lot, there's a
You
lot.
just post this right out there and yeah, people would be kind of surprised, I think, but.
I guess when you read it all the time, there's nothing in here that really frightens me, but
Let's make you aware.
there are times when it's poignant.
It's not 1950 anywhere.
Anyway, that being said.
Some places 1950 wasn't so great here. So we have last agenda item is council comments. And the upcoming agenda items, I'm sure you've all read through those and the upcoming meetings. Council comments, any comments for the group? Counselor Fox?
So, I wrote this down, during the interview process. Well, Lucas is his first name, but I think he said it. And this is based on, I was gonna, when we were talking about the transportation stuff and communication, Counselor Smith and Ingebrigtsen said better communication. I really like the idea of putting a table out, bite my tongue, because I'll sit at that table sometime. But to be out there and have our little logo and, not a black cloth, but some type of cloth, and some of us meet and maybe a city person there, so people can come up and feel comfortable about coming to it rather than a formal session. Everyone's busy and they don't want to come to these things. I thought that was a really good idea.
The concerts in the park.
Yeah, concerts in the
It's a good
park, at the, certain other events,
The board with frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
Police
Invade
report
them
at
in
hand.
and I don't
Yeah,
sign the
you go.
election.
Maybe a revenue cup.
Yeah.
Tips.
Yeah, wear dark glasses.
Good idea.
That's okay.
John, we'll see you there first.
Yeah, since I opened my mouth. And the other thing is, you had mentioned that, the appeal, there's no process for the appeal. In other cities,
There is a process for the appeal in the ordinance.
But you said
Some of
it
the
was limited.
procedural,
Kind of
the procedural details that are often in a land use appeal aren't embedded into the SDC appeal process. So that was my comment, that it was, I
It
don't-
worked rather well, I thought.
yeah, and just as a quick note on that, I thought everybody did really well on that. I thought that's a challenging one to work through, and I really watching y'all do it, I thought it was great. So I would say no, for two reasons. It doesn't happen very often, and it shouldn't happen very often. And it isn't a problem. It's just that we didn't have a pre-done protocol for it, so I was kind of explaining as we went. But unless you see, major flaws, we can add more to it, but I think it functions well. It's enough. It gave us the pathway to have that meeting here tonight and have you all decide it, which is the most important part of it.
That has been a very unique and troublesome situation. It's not the only one in town, but that is pretty unique.
Yep.
I have one comment.
Councilor Norman.
You probably have heard the Supreme Court overturn the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal regarding Grants Pass versus Johnson, regarding unhoused and homeless people and whether or not we need to have a discussion or revision of our recent ordinance.
Yeah, I sent something out, I think last Friday, to you all. I hope I included that topic. Yes, been monitoring that one. Mayor and I talked about it. And the summary take is there's no need to do anything now. What is in place currently is kind of now more than what is required, but is not out of, it didn't trigger any problems with it. You can do it that way. You just don't have to do it that way. I think there's going to be, I think the best strategy is to wait and see what amendments is needed. We haven't had the triggers that were built in. I think it's a good ordinance because the triggers that are there, it's administrative, so it can be triggered. So it's just not automatically in place. It's in place when triggered. So it doesn't, I don't think it causes us any liability, any legal liability or any functional cost or administrative overhead or liability. So I think we're fine. There's been a lot, League of Oregon Cities is putting stuff out. I'm not sure that some cities will have to change some things probably, or they'll want to. I don't think we have anything from my reading of it that puts us in any sort of concern, but it is definitely one to monitor, which goes to show that I think it was a smart ordinance that you all put together. It was good work.
The attorney consult did a
Yep.
really good job on that, like
Yep.
pulling all of those pieces together.
It will be interesting from a macro standpoint about what it does in all facets of it, pro and con.
Pro and con,
Yep.
and there are
Mhm.
viewpoints on both sides, and
Yep.
I believe it will probably be litigated again and yet, and there will be appeals
It'll change.
going.
That's the only thing that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
People do need to sleep, so it's going away. The
Right.
problem's not going.
How it happens and the mechanisms and the, and the limits and the dollars and all that stuff is still, that this will impact it. It doesn't settle. It settles one particular aspect, but there are 999 others that it doesn't settle.
Anything else? I do have, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through these questions that I need to take back answers to or have answers from you for the Joint Committee on Transportation Roundtable. I will send out the questions to each of you and ask if you have any input. Otherwise, Adam and I will sort of work on them. And I think Megan has some information. And I know Lane Act has information. And so how much it's really going to help, I'm not quite sure. That's yet to be determined, but I will send out the questions. Remember, we are not meeting. There will be no committee meetings in August. August is a hiatus, so we will not come back. Council after our July 23rd work session. We will then take August off and we will come back to council meeting. And City Hall will be closed for Labor Day, which is September 2nd. It just feels like calendars.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Two great meetings coming up. Heritage Committee has a great presentation coming up, and then Planning Commission also.
Night is Heritage.
Yeah, tomorrow night's Heritage, and then next week, Planning Commission has Patrick Wingard from DLCD giving a really great overview of statewide planning, and then a little bit of our master plan development ordinance work. So
You're encouraged to come
Yep.
on July 17th also.
Yep. And if you could let us know if you're planning to, then we can deal with any quorum and notice issues, but
There's a 6 o'clock.
correct.
start.
Yep. And the other one is, they are able to be viewed after the fact too. You don't, that easier from a quorum thing, but we can address it if you want to be there live. It helps us to know.
Right. Anything else? I missed anything? Anybody have any burning anything? No? I'm sure. At this point. Dinner? Yes, I know. 9:30 dinner. Okay, if not, I adjourn this meeting at 9:30.